Chapter 798. I don't know. Lin Yuan still maintained his confident smile as he spoke. You don't know? Daoist Red Dust was slightly startled and felt his breathing slow by half a beat. The aura qi in his body surged, and a faint anger appeared in his eyes. Daoist Red Dust was able to lead the remnants of a sect that could be destroyed at any time into the world, and he even joined the Green Forest Circle to make a living. Naturally, he was not an easy person to deal with, and his temper was not good either. When he saw Lin Yuan like this, he subconsciously thought that Lin Yuan was playing with him. Good boy, you don't know what your own cultivation method is like? He even talked about the secrets of the Red Dust Society, as if he had done some research in advance. Don't tell me you don't know the cultivation method of the Red Dust Scripture. It was ironic that the Red Dust Society's secret cultivation method, the Red Dust Scripture, was known to all the major forces in the southern cultivation world. The so-called secret cultivation method was targeted at ordinary people who joined the Red Dust Society, or the little geniuses who did not have the capital to join a first-class force, and could only mingle in a quasi-first-class or second-class force. The reason why all the forces knew about the Red Dust Scripture was because the various sects that participated in the God Sculpting sect were worried that the God Sculpting sect would rise again at any time. If another amazing genius appeared, they would all have to pay the price for the greed of their ancestors. However, with the size of the Red Dust Assembly, even if a first-class force wanted to destroy the Red Dust Assembly, they would have to suffer a great loss of vitality. If they were not careful, they might follow in the footsteps of the God Sculpting sect in the past. Coupled with the fact that they were drifting in the Jianghu, no one could guarantee that their own force would not become the next God Sculpting sect. Therefore, it was necessary to leave a way out for everyone. At the very least, if they were to encounter a similar tragedy in the future, as long as the opponent was not a particularly crazy existence, they would not directly lose their inheritance. However, the sects that knew about the Red Dust Scripture basically had the shadow of the Heavenly Gate Protector behind them. In fact, the forces that did not have the Heavenly Gate Protector involved also knew the specific content of the Red Dust Scripture. This was because Daoist Red Dust wasn't willing to stop at half-step Kongming for the rest of his life. He didn't hesitate to take out a rubbing of the Red Dust Scripture and went to various forces to ask them to learn and discuss the Tao. However, after so many years, he didn't gain anything at all. Not to mention those sects that couldn't bear to see the rise of the Red Dust Society. Even those sects that had no enmity with the Red Dust Society wouldn't exchange their cultivation methods for the Red Dust Sutra, which was a half-step Kongming cultivation method. At most, they would provide some cultivation notes for him to read. However, that was the extent of his gains. Each and every one of those sects had learned the secular scripture. But soon, Daoist Hongchen calmed down. He looked at Lin Yuan in surprise and asked, "Could it be that your cultivation method didn't come from you?" But, at this point, he seemed to know that there were some taboos, so he didn't mention anything that shouldn't be mentioned. He just pointed at the void above with a puzzled expression on his face. Lin Yuan nodded calmly, without the slightest intention of avoiding the topic. At this moment, there were a lot of people paying attention to this. In other words, there were a lot of people paying attention to Guan Zhaoshan. Those guardians of the Heavenly Gate were all very arrogant. Every one of them who could be taught cultivation methods above the Kongming level was a genius among geniuses, a monster among monsters. After all, those first-rate sects and clans would rather have no disciples than have substandard ones. First-rate sects and clans had strict requirements to recruit disciples that could be said to be perverted. In the cultivation novels of Lu Xian's past life, only those with celestial spiritual roots would be accepted. I'm just asking you if you're scared. Those guardians of the Heavenly Gate chose their successors from this group of people who were like monsters in the eyes of their peers. They picked the ones who were even more monstrous, and then supplemented them with trials that had a mortality rate of nearly 80%. Only those who could survive the trials would be qualified to come in contact with the truth of the world, and only then would they be taught the true methods of immortality. However, such monsters among monsters were not easy to find. Some of the guardians of the Heavenly Gate would also pay attention to some of the loose cultivators in the secular world. How many days did it take for Guan Zhaoshan to advance from the mortal realm to the airborne realm? Even Lin Yuan, who was amazed by the world, wasn't as talented as him. Therefore, it wasn't unexpected for Lin Yuan to be noticed by the guardians of the Heavenly Gate. Moreover, he didn't intend to hide it from the beginning. For example, his identity, his connection with the existence outside of the Heavenly Gate, and his ability to take out cultivation methods that could allow him to cultivate to the true God realm, which was the so-called transcendent realm in this world. There was no need to hide these things. If he couldn't take out anything, it would be coveted by others. After all, Lin Yuan had too many secrets. Even those giants at the level of the transcendent realm would be greedy for Lin Yuan's secrets. Transcendent realm was just a name. Transcending most of the restrictions of the rules would only allow them to act more freely and follow their own desires. It didn't mean that they had truly transcended everything and became an existence without desires. Therefore, Lin Yuan had to learn how to show off his wealth. He had to let these transcendent realm experts know that there was someone above him. Moreover, he could casually take out a set of cultivation methods that could allow him to cultivate to the transcendent realm. This also meant that the person behind him was at least in the transcendent realm. Regardless of how long this tiger skin could last, it was enough to make some people temporarily retract their claws. Among the true high-level cultivators in the Tianwu continent, there was a saying, once a transcendent realm expert appeared, all disputes would cease. It wasn't only the transcendent realm experts who had such great prestige. Instead, it was a transcendent realm expert who could cause the transcendent realm expert to appear. In that case, the other party must also be in the transcendent realm. After cultivating to the point of being immortal and indestructible, who would be willing to fight to the death over a small dispute? Those who were beaten to death would suffer losses, but wouldn't those who beat others to death also suffer losses? Therefore, everyone stopped at a certain point and gave each other some face. No transcendent realm expert dared to fight to the death with another transcendent realm expert for the secrets that Lin Yuan had revealed. After all, the longer these people lived, the more they feared death. Otherwise, with the Heavenly Gate standing there, other than the first batch of true cultivators who wanted to see what was on the other side of the Heavenly Gate that had been bringing disaster to this world, the top cultivators in this world had already fallen. Otherwise, no one would dare to step out of the Heavenly Gate for so many years. I have no objections. I'm at the Dragon King's disposal. Daoist Red Dust bowed slightly towards Lin Yuan. His expression was resentful, as if he was glad that he didn't act out of anger. He wasn't stupid enough to ask for Lin Yuan's cultivation methods. After all, Lin Yuan had said before that a mere red dust society wasn't worth such a price. He had to work for Lin Yuan and bring in enough benefits. Only then would Lin Yuan feel that this transaction was fair. When that time came, Lin Yuan naturally wouldn't go against the agreement he had made. Chapter 799. In addition, Daoist Red Dust did not forget that he had a lot of enemies. Even if he had the support of the Ether Association and the Northern Frontier, what could he do? A person dying was like a lamp going out. He and Lin Yuan still had a cooperative relationship, so there was no distinction between superiors and subordinates. Whether those cultivation forces coveted this cultivation method or were worried about the rise of the soul sculpting sect, they would not sit idly by. At that time, what could he use to resist? If he died, then everything would be over. Lin Yuan would not be so righteous as to make an enemy of the entire southern sect for a person he met by chance. Even if Lin Yuan did not act like a monster beast, he was destined to never become a saint. Even if that day came, that was because Lin Yuan had already planned to make a move on the southern cultivation forces, just like what he did in the north. Everything else was just an excuse. If Lin Yuan gave it to him, others would snatch it from him, but Lin Yuan would not care. If Lin Yuan did not give it to him, he would force it. Even if Lin Yuan did not make a move, he would still be in big trouble. First, bring those people to me. I want to kill them one by one. Second, summon all the leaders of the forest forces to Zhulu City. I have something to tell them. Lin Yuan put down his hands that were folded in front of his chest and blew gently, blowing away the hair on his forehead. The moment his right hand fell, a dark red color had splashed on the floor. The wound on his right hand had thawed, and it was once again in a bleeding posture. However, the current Lin Yuan was no longer immortal. A mere blood loss was not enough to take his life. Not to mention, after killing the Flying Star sect's senior apprentice brother, most of his wounds had already healed, so there was nothing to worry about. Ning Wang, Su Situ, and some miscellaneous officials and rogue cultivators were led into the Red Dust Inn one by the servants of the Red Dust Inn. Lin Yuan's face was indifferent as he maintained the action of drawing and retracting his blade, killing them one by one. The injury on his right hand was also healing quickly, gradually turning into a red line that looked like it was cut by an ordinary sharp weapon. It was no longer as ferocious and terrifying as before, where it had to be frozen to stop the bleeding. However, it was still not enough. Since Guan Zhaoshan's last wish mission had gone so far, the size of the wound did not matter. The bleeding from the initial wound would not have been enough to kill an airborne realm cultivator anyway. However, the wound had not completely healed, which meant that Lin Yuan had not completely completed Guan Zhaoshan's dying wish. 5 days had already passed, and if he could not do it in 5 more days, he would be rejected by this body. All the preparations he had made before would become a joke, and it would be a waste of time. At this moment, the waiter of the Red Dust Inn was also slightly taken aback. He clearly did not realize why Lin Yuan, who had been silently killing people, would suddenly raise his head to look at him. "That's it?" Lin Yuan asked. "No," he answered. Lin Yuan raised his slender eyebrows and put Guan Shanshua back into the scabbard. He frowned and glanced at the corpses on the ground, which were full of fear, unwillingness, and other expressions. "Yes." Lin Yuan's eyes suddenly lit up. He was missing one. The only one missing was the self-proclaimed Divine Marshal II, Azure Canopy King, Lei Chuming. While the Guan clan was no match for the Flying Star sect, they were not pushovers either. Only children would fight when there was no benefit. The Flying Star sect dared to target Guan Zhaoshan because Lei Chuming and the corpses were holding the Guan clan back, which led to the Guan clan's downfall, forcing Guan Zhaoshan to flee to the Red Dust Inn. She could not buy peace for the rest of her life even if she used up all her wealth. She had no choice but to take risks, which was why she summoned Lin Yuan. With so many dead, including the main culprit, how could Lei Chuming be left out? "Can you find Lei Chuming?" Lin Yuan turned around and looked at the shopkeeper, who was sweating profusely and had his head lowered behind the counter, working on an abacus. "Huh." The shopkeeper shuddered and did not control the strength in his hand well. The abacus in his hand instantly broke, and the beads rolled all over the floor. Lin Yuan was slightly stunned. "Am I that scary?" Bam! It's still missing something. Guan Zhaoshan's dying wish is Lei Chuming. Can you find him? Lin Yuan's slightly furrowed brows relaxed, and he repeated his words. Although he was unhappy, he could understand why the shopkeeper lost his composure. Although he was also a cultivator who roamed the Lulan and was used to killing and death, but Lin Yuan, who killed hundreds of people as indifferently as eating and drinking, who killed hundreds of people without even blinking his eyes, was not something those Jianghu fights could compare to. It was reasonable for his heart to palpitate for a moment. After all, his current state of mind was more like treating human lives like grass. Although he was not like ordinary demonic beasts who could kill and eat humans without any qualms, or even to the extent of treating cultivators with cultivation as delicacies, he was not much stronger. But no matter how many times the shopkeeper killed, stole, and did dirty work, he was still a human in the end. Maybe he was many times more evil than demon beasts, but in terms of temperament, he was not as good as demon beasts. That was normal. Those born in a civilized society were basically like this. Although the Shenwu dynasty could not be compared to his previous life, it was still more civilized than the world of demon beasts. The shopkeeper hesitated for a moment, then he gritted his teeth and said, reporting to the Dragon King, "It is not difficult to find Lei Chuming. Our previous search team did not fail to find Lei Chuming, the main culprit, but, Lin Yuan's brows twitched slightly, and his anger burst forth. The shopkeeper trembled again, and his teeth kept chattering. It was difficult for him to speak clearly, but Lei Chuming had a son. He was born stupid, but he was born with great strength. At the age of 14, he tore a wisdom state demon beast apart with his mortal body. He was valued by Reverend Yunhe Guanhe and was taken in as a disciple. Now, Lei Chuming is hiding in Yunhe Guanhe. We have already negotiated, but Yunhe Guanhe is not willing to hand him over. Yunhe Guanhe? Lin Yuan was silent for a moment. It was not far from Zhulu City. It could even be said that it was in the outskirts of Zhulu City. The scale was not big. Other than Reverend He, the head of the temple, there were only 3 other disciples. Lei Chuming's son should be one of them. Because of this relationship, he was protected by Reverend He. Reverend He's cultivation could not be said to be profound. He was just an ordinary Kongming state cultivator. In terms of strength, he was definitely not as good as Yan Xingqi, who was known as one of the twin stars of 10,000 swords in the past. However, his background was extremely complicated. It was said that there was more than one guardian of the heavenly gate behind him. His first disciple and second disciple were predetermined disciples of the guardians of the heavenly gate. Only the third disciple, who was born stupid but had great strength, was the disciple that Reverend He wanted to pass on his mantle. Offending Reverend He was equivalent to offending at least 2 guardians of the heavenly gate. And the third disciple was the disciple that he wanted to pass on his mantle. It was impossible for him to hand over the third disciple. Troublesome. Lin Yuan's brows were tightly knitted. His gaze was cold, and he began to think carefully. Chapter 800. The shopkeeper's lips trembled slightly, and he fell silent for a moment. Although the Red Dust Society's influence was not small, it was not to the extent that they could find out everything. For example, the fact that there were at least 2 guardians of the heavenly gate behind Spiritual Master He was not a secret that the Red Dust Society had the authority to know. However, this did not prevent the shopkeeper from being in awe of Spiritual Master He. This was because the small Cloud Crane Temple was quite famous in the south. From time to time, the leader of a large force would bring their geniuses to visit the Cloud Crane Temple, hoping that Spiritual Master He would accept them. However, there were very few people who had succeeded so far. Even so, those experts who had walked a long way in the Kongming realm did not dare to be dissatisfied with Spiritual Master He. If there was a conflict, it would be the various forces in the south who took the initiative to avoid the existence of the Cloud Crane Temple. To put it ironically, even if a chef from the Cloud Crane Temple did not have a cultivation base, his status in the cultivation world of the south was not inferior to that of a disciple who was heavily nurtured by a first-rate sect. If it were any other matter, the shopkeeper might have already persuaded Lin Yuan to let Lei Chuming go. However, the Red Dust Society had records of the descent of a god, so he wisely chose to remain silent. As for Lin Yuan, although he felt that it was troublesome, he had no intention of backing down. Lin Yuan actually did not care about the body of Guan Zhaoshan, but if he wanted to give up, it would obviously depend on the occasion. Not to mention that the system wanted to hang a knife over his head. Even if this did not happen, a mere Spiritual Master He was not enough to make him bow his head. Unless the guardian of the heavenly gate behind him appeared, then Lin Yuan would have to consider whether it was worth it to rush over. Back when they were dividing the cake in the northern frontier, the forces under the guardian of the heavenly gate were trying to curry favor with Lin Yuan. In the end, Lin Yuan used a sneaky move to divide the benefits, and no one gained any advantage. At least, no one was able to pull Lin Yuan, the reincarnated demon emperor of the ancient demon court, onto their worship. Not long after, the heavenly gate guardian threw the sky demon's mess to Lin Yuan. This was not a big deal. After all, Lin Yuan had pulled a tiger's skin, so he could not blame others for making use of this point. If Lin Yuan was unable to punish the sky demon, the guardian of the heavenly gates would naturally take action. However, Lin Yuan would most likely be punished as well. Now, if he was forced into a corner, he really did not mind boarding someone's ship. Forming a community of interests with a portion of people was obviously better than not offending anyone and not pleasing anyone. However, he would lose a certain amount of freedom. However, Lin Yuan's cultivation had reached this stage. Once he became a true god, his strength would basically change with each passing day. This kind of restriction would not be maintained for long. After thinking for a moment, Lin Yuan's eyes focused. He said in a deep voice, "Help me send a letter." Say that I'll personally make a trip to the Cloud Crane Temple in 2 days. I'll take care of the rest. Your main focus now is to gather the various forest forces in the south. I don't ask for everyone, but at least 80% of them. This shouldn't be difficult, right? We'll do our best. The shopkeeper had a bitter expression. He cupped his fists at Lin Yuan and responded in a deep voice. Now, no one knew what Lin Yuan wanted to do by gathering the various forest forces in the south. However, what was certain was that if Lin Yuan asked the Ether Association to handle this matter, even if the forest forces were dissatisfied, they would not show it on their faces. However, if the Red Dust Society were to handle this matter, everyone would probably have a simmering expression. This was because in the eyes of the forest forces, the Red Dust Society definitely did not have any proper business. The reason why they had issued this summons was to declare their sovereignty. They wanted to see how many people would give them face when they had the support of the Ether Association, and how many people would bite the bullet and not listen to the summons. Currently, the Red Dust Society only had this in name. If they were to become the chief of the forest forces in the south in the future, who knew how they would torment them? This was like a newly ascended boss who had not even had the time to use the carrot and stick. Instead, he had already teased his subordinates. Their favorable impressions and reputation would plummet. Even so, did the Red Dust Society still have the right to refuse? To put it bluntly, the Red Dust Society's overall strength was indeed the best in the forest forces in the south. However, when the other forces joined forces to fight against the Red Dust Society, it was not a matter of pride. No matter how great the grudge was, when the Red Dust Society came knocking on their door, it would not affect their unity. If it had not been for Lin Yuan's declaration, the Red Dust Society would not even have had the chance to tease the forest forces. Moreover, their boss had already waved his hand and handed the entire Red Dust Society to Lin Yuan. At this moment, they could be said to be Lin Yuan's servants. 2 days later, Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed. He turned over and got out of bed, hanging Guan Shanxue behind his waist and sighing softly. The Red Dust Society did not get any benefits. Although he was working for Lu Xian, he had no intention of submitting to him. As such, the breakthrough mission was not completed for a long time, and his cultivation was stuck at the peak of the airborne realm, unable to make any progress. If he went all out, it would not be difficult for him to go 200 to 300 rounds with a Heavenly Star Realm expert. If he were to go all out, it would not be difficult for Lin Yuan to go all out. Even if he were to encounter a half-step Kongming Realm expert like the Red Dust Society, Lin Yuan would be able to escape unscathed. However, with such strength, there was no way he could compete with a genuine Kongming Realm expert. Spiritual Master Lin Yuan tightened his grip on the sword. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he said in a hoarse voice, "I hope you know what you're doing." With Guan Zhaoshan's basic attributes, even if he were to squeeze out a bit of qi and blood to nourish the blade from time to time, it would be able to greatly increase the power of the blade nurturing technique. Moreover, Lin Yuan had been running the blade nurturing technique for the past 2 days with all his might, taking a lot of food and pills to nourish his blood and qi every day, repeatedly tempering the blood and qi on the blade. It was hard to say if the blade could kill a Kongming Realm expert, but what was certain was that the blade would most likely be destroyed. Even if it did not shatter on the spot, it would not be able to be used again until he found suitable materials to repair it. Under the situation where he did not consume the power of incense to perform his own skills, the blade was Lin Yuan's greatest reliance. If he were to lose the power of the blade, it would be tantamount to cutting off one of his arms. Therefore, he would try to avoid the blade as much as possible. With a thought, he darted out and crossed half of Zhulu's city in the blink of an eye. After all, Guan Zhaoshan's basic attributes were there. Although he was only at the peak of the airborne realm, his speed was only a few hundred points lower than Lin Yuan's own. Using the Thousand Mountains blade technique was enough to make up for the difference in attack attributes. If there was any advantage Lin Yuan's own body had, it would be the absolute defense under the blessing of the Jiao Dragon Scale armor. Even someone with a special constitution like Guan Zhaoshan could not surpass Lin Yuan in this attribute. Chapter 801. 15 minutes later. At the foot of Mount Cloud Crane. Lin Yuan took a leisurely stroll and walked up the mountain step by step. He knew that the Red Dust Society did not have much influence, but he never thought that enlightened master he would throw away the visiting card that the Red Dust Society had sent in his name. It was as if he really did not intend to give Lin Yuan any face. Indeed, enlightened master he could ignore Guan Zhaoshan, but since he had the Heavenly Gate Guardian standing behind him, he should know who was hiding under Guan Zhaoshan's skin. Enlightened master he, Junior Lin Yuan has come to pay a visit. Lin Yuan paused in his steps and roared in a cold voice. The scenery in front of him was still beautiful, but Lin Yuan's intuition told him that there was a great terror ahead. Special constitutions were usually favored by luck. In addition to Lin Yuan's intuition as a demon beast and his clear perception of all things after cultivating the divine way, even Lin Yuan himself found it hard to convince himself that it was an illusion. Enlightened master he had probably already expected this. Throwing away the visiting card would be of no use, and he would definitely not let the matter rest. Therefore, before he came to Mount Cloud Crane, he had already done something on the path that enlightened master he would definitely pass through. Since I didn't accept your visiting card, I don't welcome you to pay a visit to the mountain. But you still came. That's fine, I'll wait on the mountain. If you have the ability to climb the mountain, I'll accept whatever methods you have. If you don't have the ability to climb the mountain, then it's better for you to return home. Enlightened master he's aged voice rang out from the void. Soon after, he laughed coldly and said, "Don't blame me for not warning you beforehand. In front of you is a great formation that uses Mount Cloud Crane's spirit vein as its foundation. It's a formation that combines killing and confusion. It was created by a senior expert, and even I don't know much about it. If you're trapped in the formation, I may not be able to open it in time to save your life." Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows slightly. He had read a lot about the mountain guarding formation in novels, but this was the first time he had come across such a thing in reality. Although the sects in the north also had such formations, they were completely defenseless against the soldiers of the northern frontier. In the end, it all depended on the combat strength of both sides. However, the array formation on Mount Cloud Crane was connected to the spirit vein, and its energy was boundless. It was clearly not easy to break through. If he were to force his way through, it would mean that he would have to battle the entire spirit vein by himself. If he were to break through the formation, it would mean that the spirit energy within Mount Cloud Crane's spirit vein would be completely destroyed by him. It would be extremely difficult for the entire mountain range to absorb any more spirit energy, and who knew how long it would take for it to recover. It was not that Lin Yuan cared about the environment or that he was compassionate. Although Mount Cloud Crane was dominated by Cloud Crane Temple, there were countless cave abodes of itinerant cultivators and monster lairs. If he were to destroy the spirit vein, it would be equivalent to forcing them to move away. If he were to encounter an unlucky person who happened to be cultivating in seclusion, he would basically be unable to escape the fate of failing to break through. If he were to be unlucky, it was not impossible for him to go through chi deviation or die on the spot. Therefore, not only was it immoral, it was also easy to make enemies. Of course, this was based on the premise that Lin Yuan had the ability to destroy the spirit vein. Lin Yuan stood in front of the formation. His strange eyes flashed and he stepped into it, continuing to climb up the mountain. Stupid system. Get to work. Lin Yuan, you're pole vaulting in the latrine. That's too much. Now that you're in someone else's killing formation and you're expecting me to break it, you'd better be more polite with your words. The system scolded him. Lin Yuan's face was expressionless as he sneered in his heart. I don't care anyway. Now that Guan Zhaoshan is gone, I don't have to worry about you forcefully taking over this body. Even if I die here today, my spirit will only be damaged. After returning to my main body to recuperate for a period of time, I'll be alive and kicking. If you have the ability, don't say anything and I'll charge in as I please. Ding. Take 71 steps forward and wait for 3 breaths. Then, take 3 steps to the right. The system was still scolding, but it obediently pointed out the life gate for Lin Yuan. It could not be helped. Regardless of whether Guan Zhaoshan's body landed in Lin Yuan's or his hands, it would become an important combat force in the future. It would be invincible among those below the level of a true god. It could even be used as a one-time item and was comparable to a nuclear weapon. Lin Yuan could ignore it because Guan Zhaoshan's existence was also a huge threat to him. However, the system could not ignore it. If it could obtain control of Guan Zhaoshan, it would be equivalent to a wave of ascension and hanging a knife over Lin Yuan's head. At least before Lin Yuan became a true god, there would be plenty of opportunities to educate Lin Yuan on how to respect it, the source of the heavenly axiom. Lin Yuan obeyed silently. A chill ran down his spine and a looming murderous intent surrounded him. Lin Yuan had no doubt that as long as he took a wrong step, this formation based on Mount Cloud Crane's spirit vein could instantly tear him apart. Draw your sword and slash forward. The system reminded him again. With this body's reaction and speed, Lin Yuan drew his sword almost instantly after the system's reminder. Immediately after, he felt the blade in his hands sink and his body sway slightly. He almost subconsciously took a step back to reduce the force. However, at that moment, due to the alarm bells ringing in his heart, Lin Yuan gritted his teeth and endured the strange force produced by the collision between the unknown object and Guan Shanxue. Therefore, Lin Yuan even felt his cheeks burning and the blood in his chest churning. Charge forward as fast as you can. Stop only when I tell you to. Damn, the person who set up the formation is a little strange. I almost King misjudged him. The system seemed to be in an extremely bad mood and scolded him again. In reality, the system's bad mood was not because of Lin Yuan's attitude, but because the person who set up the formation was too strange. He even directly ignored some basic rules to set up this formation. If it were an ordinary formation master trying to break the formation, he would have lost his life immediately. For any world, formations were not difficult to understand. This was because most of them were derived from algebra. Other than a few formations that were naturally formed by heaven and earth, logic lines could be found in most other formations. For example, if there were 3 passages in front of you and 2 of them were dead ends, then the remaining one would be a life. Otherwise, if the formation failed, even a layman would be able to quickly see the flaws and would not step into the passage at all. To a formation master, this was a huge failure. However, Lin Yuan drew his sword not because the system's instructions were wrong, but because the person who set up the formation had guessed that someone would be able to see the life of the formation and deliberately set up a hidden killing formation at the place where the life gathered. If the person who entered the formation did not block it, this hidden killing formation would instantly tear him apart. However, if he blocked it and failed to control his strength, he would directly enter a dead end as soon as he took a step forward. This was a huge taboo. There were 50 great Taos and 49 were derived from heaven. The rules that even the heavenly Tao had to abide by were openly ignored. This made it very angry. Chapter 802. Lin Yuan, take 3 more steps forward and 7 more steps to the right, and you will reach the exit. I reckon that there are other traps in this evil array, especially the last exit. Even if someone managed to break through the previous traps in one go, they should let down their guard here. You have to be careful. Don't fall into the trap after taking 99 steps out of 100. The system took the initiative to remind him. Beep. Touching an evil array triggered a mission, enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. Mission name, enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. Description. The array master who set up this array followed the rules of the array and left a chance for those who entered the array. However, he set up traps in the place where the chance for life gathered to plot against those who had the ability to break the array. This is equivalent to not leaving any chance for life. This behavior has violated one of the supreme rules. Please find the array master and kill him to correct the heavens. Mission reward, depends on the degree of completion. Punishment for failure, none. The moment the mission was triggered, before Lin Yuan could even take a step, the system began to send out question marks. Lin Yuan was silent for a moment and asked doubtfully, "You didn't take your medicine today, did you? Do you think I don't have enough trouble?" Being able to mobilize the spiritual power of a mountain range to connect with the array, such a method might not be able to find a single array master in the entire north who could compete with it. Therefore, The person who set up this evil array was most likely a guardian of the divine gate or an old monster who had survived countless years ago. However, no matter which one it was, this guy would not be easy to deal with. Furthermore, wasn't this mission a waste of time? Although you are the origin of the heavenly axiom, and this world may have been separated from the primeval world, this world has its own will. It is not appropriate for an outsider like you to meddle in other people's business, right? You are the one who didn't take your medicine. This mission was not issued by me. When have you seen me give you a mission without any punishment for failure? This is a privilege, do you know? Just like when a great era arrives in every world, the heavenly axiom will bestow great fortune upon certain life forms, turning them into the main characters of the era, using this to achieve certain goals. Or perhaps, it's just to dispel the boredom of eternal existence. However, this kind of giving without asking for anything in return is a privilege that belongs solely to the will of the world. For an outsider like me to give you a mission, you have to pay attention to an equal exchange. At this moment, the system was no longer cursing. It was even a little exasperated. What the hell is this? How did he trigger a mission? Suddenly, the system sent out an ellipsis, and a layer of cold sweat appeared on Lin Yuan's forehead. His mission had come from the system, which was the heavenly Tao source. To be able to give him a mission in front of the heavenly Tao source, it had to be in existence on the same level as the heavenly Tao source. In other words, this mission had come from the world will of the heaven martial world. An incomplete world will, an incomplete heavenly Tao source, it seemed like they were really the same. After all, the heaven martial continent was most likely separated from the Great Desolation world, and its will was indeed an incomplete version of the Great Desolation world's heavenly Tao. If it was not, then the fun would be even bigger. If the heaven martial world was an independent world, once it completed the 3 realms and 6 Taos, the world will would directly leap to an existence on the same level as the Great Desolation world's heavenly Tao. Its power was not something that the incomplete heavenly Tao source could compare to. It could now bypass the system and give him a mission. If it was complete, then what would happen? The mission it gave out today was not mandatory for Lin Yuan to complete. The reward would be based on the degree of completion. As long as Lin Yuan participated in this matter, even if the evil array master died in an accident or due to old age, Lin Yuan would still be able to get the reward. On the other hand, even if he did not participate in this mission, he would not be in any danger. But in the future, what if it gave Lin Yuan another mission? This fellow did not need to abide by the rules of equal exchange. Lin Yuan even felt that a blood-red danger word had appeared above his head. Don't look at me, I still don't understand how it used my authority to give you a mission. Since I don't know how it did it, then it did not give you a mission. How can I break this? There is no way to break this. However, the last time this fellow fought with me, it was to fight for your freedom, and also to place a piece to complete the world a step further. So in the short term, it will definitely not harm you. After all, you are the king of hell that it has already decided. So I guess the reward for this mission is extremely generous, you should just do it honestly. Strictly speaking, the system had fought with this world's will 3 times, and it had been at a disadvantage all 3 times. The first time was when Lin Yuan had consumed the dragonification route, and the other party had directly invaded. Although the system had reacted in time, it had not succeeded. Lin Yuan had still mutated and possessed the power to shape the Netherworld River and open up the Netherworld soil, thus becoming the king of hell. The second time was when Lin Yuan had chased after Lin Yuan. Although the system had concealed Lin Yuan's aura, Lin Yuan had not dared to continue staying in the northern frontier. He could only head to the Endless Sea, which led to the subsequent series of events. This was the 3rd time. This time, the system did not even realize how the other party had attacked and was immediately checkmated. This world's will was growing, and it was growing at an extremely fast speed. Fortunately, it was still on his side now. I, Lin Yuan, am using double the cheat. Shaking his head, Lin Yuan sighed softly. This trashy system had caused him to tremble with fear, but it still had no way to solve it. However, now was not the time to dwell on this matter. It was better to get out of this evil array as soon as possible. Fine, perfected he, and ask for Lei Chuming, as well as ask about the evil array master. Following the system's instructions, Lin Yuan walked out of the array safely. His gaze swept over the surroundings, and only then did he let out a long breath of turbid air. The backup plan that he had imagined did not appear. It was as if the other party had not thought that the person who had entered the array would really be able to reach this place, so they had not made any preparations. The scalp-numbing sense of danger was also all behind him. Boom! Just then, a loud sound was heard. Lin Yuan raised his head and saw a sallow and emaciated figure with messy hair like withered grass hurtling towards him like a cannonball. It was so fast that even the eye of the god could only see an afterimage. He raised his saber to block. The figure's fist had already reached him. Guan Shanchue's silver-white saber was directly smashed into a C shape, and it almost imprinted directly on Lin Yuan's body. At the same time, a faint layer of white frost had already condensed on the tip of the other party's fist. Only then did he stop punching Lin Yuan. However, this person did not have the slightest intention of retreating. He just shook his fist on the spot, and the frost was directly thrown to the ground, turning into a pool of water and soaking into the soil. Chapter 803. Seamless Body. Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly, and a tinge of fear appeared on his face. Back in the Fire Kirin's grotto heaven, Lin Yuan had found someone with an innate seamless body among the imprisoned orcs. However, the Fire Kirin later revived and the grotto heaven was destroyed. Given the strength of that little guy, there was no way that he could have survived. It was just that he did not expect to encounter a second seamless body after such a long time. It was true that the seamless body was not a special constitution. It was just an ability that would naturally appear when one's body's potential was developed to a certain extent. Even if one was born with a seamless body, they would at most be considered good seedlings for martial arts. However, they were completely incomparable to Guan Zhaoshan, who truly had a special constitution. It was not that there were no warriors in the Tianwu world, such as Lu Hu and Su Nan. However, without exception, those people were generally of lower status. That was because the path of warriors was much more difficult than that of cultivators. Before reaching the Heaven's Strength realm, warriors could easily beat up cultivators of the same level. They could even wrestle with monsters of the same level. However, when warriors cultivated to the extreme, the most they could do was to condense their internal force into spiritual qi. To be able to reach such a level, in Lin Yuan's previous life, they would have been considered masters or innate stage experts. At the same time, they would have developed their bodies to the extreme, and they could easily win against cultivators of the airborne realm. However, that was the limit of the path of warriors. Unless one could reach the legendary Earth God realm and enter the path of martial arts, only then would they be able to compete with cultivators of the Heaven's Strength realm. However, this was Mount Cloud Crane, perfected his territory. As an existence that had the backing of the heavenly gates guarding it, even if the Cloud Crane Temple did not have any ordinary people, those who came and went were definitely big shots in the cultivation world of the South or disciples with monstrous natural endowments. How could a human ancient martial art practitioner suddenly appear here? It was not that all the cultivators in this world looked down on warriors, but under normal circumstances, ordinary warriors without any background were not even qualified to make friends with them. With Jinrenhe's cultivation and status, taking in a warrior was a very shameful thing. This little girl is quite knowledgeable. The cultivator sneered and said in a deep voice, "This saber of yours is not bad. It can inject cold poison into the opponent's body. If this drags on for too long, even if you don't want your life, it will destroy the opponent's foundation. It is very sinister." Speaking up to this point, he paused for a moment before continuing with a smile. "It's a pity that you met a cultivator like me who has cultivated the seamless body. It's like a mouse meeting a cat. Not to mention using insidious means, you can't even escape even if you want to." He wasn't being conceited. After all, he had cultivated the seamless body. The cold poison couldn't corrode him at all. He had wasted one of Lin Yuan's special suffixes at the start of the battle. If Lin Yuan was only capable of this, he would have to give up his life here today. "What is your relationship with Daoist Master He?" Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly as he asked indifferently. Boom. The cultivator didn't have the intention to talk nonsense with Lin Yuan. He rushed forward again and punched at Lin Yuan's face. Cultivation nourished one's nature, and cultivators strengthened their bodies. Although this cultivator couldn't suppress Lin Yuan in any way, the qi and blood surging in his body were like a dragon. His every movement caused the airflow, which immediately made Lin Yuan feel as if he was sinking into a swamp. His movements slowed down for no reason. This time, he couldn't even lift his saber to block the attack. Buzz! The cultivator's fist landed on Lin Yuan's face, but it made a dull noise. It was like this punch didn't hit a body of flesh and blood, but a solid big bell. Under the counterforce, the cultivator pulled back in pain and shook his right hand. Seeing that the injury was beginning to heal, his face showed a relieved expression. Then he looked up at Lin Yuan and said coldly, "You little girl, you have a lot of insidious tricks." In his knowledge, a body of flesh and blood wouldn't have a texture comparable to metal. At least, among the powerful cultivators he knew, none of them had cultivated to this level. At most, they were tall, muscular, and had a strong ability to resist attacks. Therefore, when he failed to kill the enemy with one blow, his first reaction was that Lin Yuan had used some insidious trick again, like the cold poison lingering on the long saber in his hand. But even so, he had nothing to fear. The physique of a cultivator was not stronger than that of a demonic beast of the same level, but it was about the same. As long as the wound could heal, he could continue to fight. On the contrary, no matter how insidious the methods this girl had prepared in advance, there would be a time when they would be exhausted. However, when he looked up, he saw Lin Yuan's pretty face. At this moment, it had turned completely golden, like the Buddha statues in temples made of real gold. It even looked dazzling. "You. What the hell are you?" The cultivator's voice trembled slightly. A living person had turned into a golden statue in front of his eyes. This was beyond his understanding. Even a cultivator wouldn't be able to do something like this, right? "I just added a buff to myself. It's a small matter." Lin Yuan grinned and raised Guan Shanxue in her hand. She said coldly, "Since you don't want to talk nicely, I'll break your hands and feet first. Let's see if you can still behave." The silver-white long saber danced and the cold air leaked out. It vaguely condensed into white snowflakes. As Lin Yuan's saber danced faster and faster, the snowflakes gradually increased. Then, they condensed into a pure white snow mountain suspended above Lin Yuan's head. Although the Thousand Mountains saber technique was a second-rate martial art, it was not inferior to the offensive techniques of the first-rate forces in the Tianwu continent. Especially when it was practiced to the advanced level, a casual saber move would be like 1,000 mountains. Lin Yuan's Thousand Mountains saber technique had not yet reached the advanced level. At most, it could be considered a beginner. It was a fool's dream to condense the power of a mountain to deal with Jinren he who was in the Kongming realm. But to suppress a cultivator in the transformative realm was just a piece of cake. Alarm bells rang in the martial artist's heart. He didn't even have time to think before he suddenly punched out with his right hand. The wind from his fist shook like a cannonball. The saber fell, and the snow mountain fell as well. The fist wind and the snow mountain collided. In an instant, half of the snow mountain collapsed. However, that was all. "Kneel down." Lin Yuan's eyes were wide open as he suddenly shouted. Half of the snow mountain came crashing down, and a huge force poured down. Even a cultivator at the peak of the airborne realm, or even stronger, could not withstand it. He knelt in front of Lin Yuan with one knee. His face was flushed, and he put his hands up in a holding position, forcibly holding the remaining half of the snow mountain. Only then did he not get crushed into a pile of meat paste. Although it was just a fake snow mountain condensed by Lin Yuan's saber technique, the suppressive force of the Thousand Mountains saber technique was not to be trifled with. Chapter 804. If it had been an ordinary airborne realm cultivator taking on that attack, they would have been squashed into minced meat. Even the mountain-shaking ape, which was known to be the strongest in the wisdom realm, only dared to use the name mountain-shaking instead of mountain-holding ape. If monsters could not do it, humans of the same level would not have been able to do it either. Therefore, this martial artist did indeed have some skills. A punch to the chest and a punch to the face. Every move was fatal. Ordinary warriors would not have been as ruthless as you. While the fist technique is simple, it was able to mobilize the power of chi and blood to seal the target's movements. You must have some background. Lin Yuan stretched out his hand and touched his chin. A playful look appeared in his eyes as he smiled and said, "Judging from your age, you are only around 30 years old, yet you are already able to cultivate to the transcendent realm. Apart from your talent, I'm afraid that you are not lacking in cultivation resources on a daily basis. Therefore, you should be from the military, and your status in the south is not low. Furthermore, you appeared on Mount Cloud Crane to ambush me. In that case, you should be Lei Chuming's personal guard. Is he so sure that I will die here?" The person who set up the evil formation was so vicious that he was comparable to Cyrus of the Endless Sea. However, he did not set up any traps at the exit. That was because one would have to constantly calculate if they wanted to break through the evil formation. The consumption of energy was one aspect. Even if they found the way out, they would have to deal with the trap set up by the person. The slightest carelessness in the formation would have led to death. As such, every time they attacked, they would have to go all out. It was already impressive to be able to make it this far. However, there was a limit to every living being. Walking out of the evil formation would have exhausted one's energy. Any person with a high level of cultivation could easily take the life of the person who broke through the formation. Naturally, there was no need to waste resources on setting up traps. If there was someone who could easily pass through the evil formation and still be at their peak, theoretically speaking, it was impossible. That was because at such a level, there was no need to break through the formation at all. They could have just destroyed the spirit vein on Mount Cloud Crane. Why would they have to take off their pants and fart? However, the guy who arranged the evil array probably didn't expect that there would be such a freak as Lin Yuan in the world. He entered the array without the slightest calculation. Every step he took was inspired by the system. In addition, he had a keen sense of danger to determine how much effort he should spend to deal with the hidden hand. This trip was not without consumption, but for Guan Zhaoshan's terrifying physique, it was actually no different from his peak state. The martial artist's face turned cold, but he didn't say anything. However, Lin Yuan nodded his head indifferently and sneered, "It's good that he's confident. If he didn't believe that I would die here, he might have secretly run away. I spent so much effort, if it was for nothing." Before he finished speaking, Lin Yuan suddenly slashed forward with his saber. A cold wind swept out, but it was easily blocked by a little Daoist boy who looked to be about 14 or 15 years old. "Layman Guan, the Abbey Dean said that since you have broken through the protective mountain array, even if you are an uninvited guest, he has no choice but to accept your visit to the mountain. He specially ordered me to come down and invite Layman Guan up the mountain for a chat." The little Daoist boy looked like a porcelain doll carved out of jade, but there was not the slightest bit of smoke and fire on his body. His big eyes were filled with a lot of blood vessels, which added a bit of a ferocious aura to him. Although he asked Lin Yuan to go up the mountain, his feet did not move at all. Instead, he looked straight at Lin Yuan. That kind of cold gaze was not unfamiliar to Lin Yuan. That was the gaze of someone looking at a corpse. "I have hands and feet, why do I need you to lead the way? Could it be that the remaining path is more dangerous than this evil formation?" Lin Yuan slowly lifted Guan Shanxue up and grinned hideously, "The dignified Jinren He, a reputable true cultivator. I thought that your reputation was not in vain, so I came here personally. In the end, you used the protective mountain array to stop me from going up the mountain, and then found a martial artist to test my skills. Until now, you don't even dare to show your true body, and you want to use a demon puppet to fool me?" The demon puppet was another old object that Lin Yuan had seen before. Before Zhanshan City was destroyed, the old ancestor of the Lu clan possessed the demon puppet and followed the demon-subduing group into the mountain to search for Lin Yuan. In the end, the demon puppet was defeated by Lin Yuan. In the end, the demon puppet was possessed by Fang Tian and escaped. After Zhanshan City was destroyed, Fang Tian, who was possessed by Fang Tian, turned into a demon from hell and chased after Lin Yuan for a long time. Until now, he still could not find the whereabouts of the demonized Fang Tian. It was as if he had evaporated into thin air, like a bomb buried in the northern frontier, which made him very frustrated. Looking at the demon puppet now, those bad memories kept rising in Lin Yuan's mind, and his eyes turned cold. You know the demon puppet? Ha! Good. It seems that my good-for-nothing son really lost his life in your hands. Good. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. Since you have entered Mount Cloud Crane today, there is no need for you to leave. I will refine your spirit and turn it into a supplementary material for my cultivation. The Taoist boy laughed strangely, and the killing intent in his eyes became more intense. On the other hand, Lin Yuan was stunned. A good-for-nothing son? Thinking of this, Lin Yuan's gaze became increasingly strange when he looked at the Taoist boy. He did not know much about the ancestor of the Lu family, but he was at most a cultivator at the peak of the airborne realm. However, his methods were indeed strange. Before he was demonized, he escaped from the wise mountain-shaking ape, who used his life as fuel to temporarily step into the Mountain Lord realm. After that, he went on a killing spree in mountain-blocking city. Whether it was the army of the Shenwu dynasty at that time, or the embroidered uniform guards in Yibusho at the northern frontier, they could not find this damned guy. Now that he thought about it, the Lu family's ancestor had so many trump cards that it was not something a small border family could take out. It turned out that he had a void realm father. Thinking about it, the Lu family took root in mountain-blocking city because the ancestor of the Lu family wanted to conveniently extract the essence of demonic beasts to cultivate this strange evil technique. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. Lin Yuan's gaze also became cold. Although this world did not have the 3 realms and 6 paths, the cycle of reincarnation still existed. However, this responsibility that should have been borne by the underworld was now handled by the will of the world. In a sense, although the Celestial Arch and the Lord of the Underworld could be said to be the apex of gods and indispensable existences in a complete world, they were just workers for the will of the world. The Lu family's ancestor cultivated an evil technique that was far more evil than those of the southern demon cult. Whether it was being refined into a demonic puppet by this evil technique, or having their spirit and essence extracted, they would be directly squeezed dry. Their body and soul would be destroyed on the spot, and they would become a helping hand for others to cultivate. Although it was abhorrent to harm others, it was actually nothing in this world where the strong preyed on the weak. However, this evil technique would not only harm one's life, it would also prevent one from having a second life. Chapter 805. Boom! A bolt of lightning exploded in the air. The sky, which had been clear just a moment ago, was instantly filled with a torrential downpour. It was all about the actions, not the heart. There were some things that the Lord of Hades had to take care of. The expression on the little boy's face grew increasingly ferocious. He cackled and said, "You're not here in your true form. What can you do even if you borrow the power of the heavens? You're only at the pinnacle of the airborne realm right now. If I wanted to kill you, it would only take one breath. You." His voice came to an abrupt halt before he could finish. That was because Lin Yuan had already drawn his blade at that moment. Guan Shanshua's blade continued to tremble. The air was filled with the sound of the blade's aura, as if the blade was wailing. Blood chi, cold chi, and genuine chi gathered together and circled around Guan Shanshua's silver-white saber. When the saber fell, a blood dragon covered in frost armor had already whizzed out and crashed into the little Taoist boy. The little boy's face was filled with shock. He seemed to be unable to believe that someone at the pinnacle of the airborne realm was able to bring out such a terrifying attack. The little boy held his breath for a moment and raised his hand to perform hand seals. Beams of light shot out, but they were easily torn apart by the blood dragon. 2 breaths later, the blood dragon slammed into the little Taoist boy's chest and sent him flying. His body was torn apart in midair, and a large amount of blood splattered everywhere. Not even his bones were left on the spot. I indeed can't borrow the power of the heavens, but this rain is not rain. It's an all-encompassing net. Lin Yuan's eyes were calm. The Guan Shanshua in his hand cracked inch by inch. Black spiderweb-like cracks crawled all over the blade. The rain clouds were stacked on top of each other for hundreds of thousands of miles, and Lin Yuan's magical power of moving clouds and summoning rain had been activated to the extreme. The power of incense on the panel was constantly pulsating, and it began to decline rapidly at a frightening speed, just to support this terrifying heavy rain. The area covered by the rain clouds was Lin Yuan's domain. Even if something invisible wanted to pass through here, it would be directly sensed by Lin Yuan. Similarly, with a thought from Lin Yuan, the rain clouds in the sky would fall with the black water of the Nether Realm. Lin Yuan had used this trick to deal with the Northern Restoration Society. However, the scale of the Northern Restoration Society was incomparable. In addition, Lin Yuan was not in his original body at the moment. If it really came to that, the incense power he had obtained from trading with some members of the Red Dust Society might not be enough to burn. But apart from that, anything that wanted to enter or leave this area covered by heavy rain needed Lin Yuan's permission. Even Dao Initiation Realm cultivators could only watch helplessly. Only Supremes and above had the ability to force their way through this domain of burning Joss flame. Of course, the prerequisite was that they were willing to pay a large amount of Joss flame as the price. Ha ha ha, Lin Yuan, your saber strike is truly terrifying. Unfortunately, it can't kill me. Now, even your saber is broken. What other means do you have to fight me? Today, you must die. Spiritual Master He's voice rang out again. It was obvious that he was much weaker. Lin Yuan had used the saber nurturing technique to kill his demon puppet. Although it was not enough to take his life, it had definitely damaged his vitality. Even all the effort he had put into refining the demon puppet had gone down the drain. This resentment was even greater than when he found out that his only son had died at the hands of the Black Serpent. Lin Yuan stood in the rain with an indifferent expression. He calmly sheathed his saber. With a flip of his right hand, an ordinary oil paper umbrella appeared in his hand. Humph, you don't know what you're talking about. Even the rain was summoned by you. Are you holding an umbrella just to show off? Spiritual Master He seemed to be able to see Lin Yuan's every move. Therefore, when Lin Yuan sheathed his saber and took out his umbrella, he mocked him. He had already received news from the guardians of the Gate of Heaven that Lin Yuan was not a native of this world. Instead, he was the same as the experts who had established the ancient demon court. He came from a world outside the Gate of Heaven. He even suspected that he came from a world that spread cultivation to the almighty experts of the Tianwu world. Even though he knew that Lin Yuan's saber strike was his trump card, he still did not let down his guard. He was worried that Lin Yuan had other tricks up his sleeves. If Lin Yuan had attacked the Cloud Crane Temple without caring about anything, he would have felt better. But now, he had taken out an oil paper umbrella and looked like he was going to enjoy the rain. At the same time, he was puzzled. At the same time, he also felt that a great terror was rapidly approaching him. He had already tried. Even his spiritual sense could not penetrate this place covered by rain clouds. Clearly, this rain was really as Lin Yuan had said. It was an inescapable net. Not to mention the state of the god descending, even if Lin Yuan himself came, he would have to pay a big price to make such a strange rain. Naturally, it was impossible to just hold an umbrella at the foot of the mountain and quietly look at the Cloud Crane Temple. This guy can't be thinking of starving me to death, right? Lin Yuan did not open the oil paper umbrella. When one's cultivation reached the airborne realm, they were already able to release spiritual qi. Those with a high cultivation level could directly use spiritual qi to control objects. Whether it was standing in the air or controlling all kinds of weapons in long-range combat, it was all based on this principle. Mere rain would not be able to touch a cultivator unless they wanted to. Things like umbrellas were for mortals to shelter from the rain. There's probably something wrong with this umbrella. Spiritual Master He sat in the temple and muttered with a gloomy expression. Spiritual Master, didn't you say that as long as this guy came to Mount Cloud Crane, he would definitely be able to? Gulp, Lei Chuming, whose face was pale, stood behind Spiritual Master He. Before he could finish speaking, he was glared at by spiritual master He's ruthless eyes. He could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva and did not dare to continue. Deep down, however, he thought that this old thing was just fishing for fame. When he was bragging before, he patted his chest and said that the protective formation of Mount Cloud Crane was so powerful that even if Lin Yuan came to find him, he would not be able to break the formation. As long as he could stall for time until the god descended, all the dangers would be easily solved. But in the end? What a guy. Speaking of which, such a powerful formation of Mount Cloud Crane was only able to stall Lin Yuan for the time it took for an incense stick to burn. It even lost the strongest and most loyal guard captain by his side. Now, even spiritual master he himself was trapped in the temple by this strange rain, not daring to take a step out. It was as if he was waiting for Lin Yuan to take the initiative to attack. He wanted to rely on some of the arrangements in the temple to kill Lin Yuan. But then again, would things really go so smoothly? Lei Chuming felt a chill on his neck, but he did not dare to continue speaking. He just looked pitifully at spiritual master He, who was deep in thought. His mind was working quickly, thinking about how he should escape. Spiritual master He glanced at Lei Chuming from the corner of his eyes without batting an eyelid. His lips moved slightly, but he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. The entire Cloud Crane temple suddenly fell into a dead silence. At the same time, Lin Yuan, who was at the foot of the mountain, merely reached out his hand and patted the oil paper umbrella. He said expressionlessly, "Stop sleeping. I'll treat you to an appetizer today, a hodgepodge. What do you think?" Chapter 806. In the oil paper umbrella. A blue bug slowly poked its head out, but it was smashed to pieces by a falling raindrop on the spot. A moment later, more and more blue bugs flew out of the oil paper umbrella, slowly forming a burly figure in front of Lin Yuan. It was Tao Tai, who killed the demon kings in the endless sea like killing dogs. "I smell it, something delicious." Tao Tai turned his head, and his gaze fell on the Cloud Crane temple. He sneered, "There won't be any trouble if I eat him, right?" Tao Tai was the same as Lin Yuan at this moment. It was just a consciousness that had descended, but in essence, its state was completely different from Lin Yuan's, because its body was not in this world. These bugs were just some ordinary creatures that it relied on. Without the support of his consciousness, even raindrops could easily crush these bugs. But after Taotia's consciousness descended, these bugs gathered together and erupted with power that could easily kill the existence of the Demon King realm. "If you only eat him, there won't be any trouble, but I guess you can't help it." Lin Yuan's gaze narrowed slightly, and he also sneered, "There are 3 teenagers in the temple. 2 of them have extraordinary aptitudes, and are disciples that the guardian of the Elysium of this world has taken a fancy to. The other one has extraordinary talent, and once tore apart an intelligent demon beast with a mortal body. For you, these 3 teenagers are delicacies, and you can't help it." "That's true." Tao Tai nodded with a serious face, as if he didn't put the guardian of the Elysium in his eyes at all. There were countless cultivators in this world, but they had all fallen and decayed. The most elite part either died in the hands of Hongjuan's minions, or stepped out of the Elysium early and disappeared without a trace. They might have died in the Sea of Bitterness, or they might have gone to other worlds. As for the rest, even if their cultivation had reached the immortal and indestructible true God realm, they were just cowards who didn't even dare to step out of the Elysium. True gods of this level, compared to the huge host group behind Lin Yuan, were simply too weak to withstand a single blow. Of course, there were troubles. However, if they were to really fall out, Lin Yuan would definitely not be the first to admit defeat. Furthermore, the guardian of the heavenly gate who placed his disciple under a rogue cultivator like Shinren He, who did not belong to any sect, would most likely not have a high level of cultivation. He would probably only be at the level of Taoism, which was on par with the demon kings in the endless sea. How could this be considered trouble? Obviously, it didn't count. However, there is someone in the Taoist temple that I must kill. So, I'll eat the chowder soup and the 3 side dishes. You wait for a while. I'll take that person away. You can do whatever you want with the rest." Lin Yuan's tone changed, as if he didn't care about human life at all. All right. I'm used to seafood. It's not bad to eat some mountain food. Tao Tai nodded, his smile ferocious and terrifying. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man in a white robe was standing above the clouds, his face so gloomy that it was almost dripping water. The sudden appearance of the rain clouds was extremely strange. Even though he had exerted a Herculean effort, he still couldn't take half a step into the area shrouded in heavy rain. If that was all, it would be fine. Some powerful trapping arrays could also do it, but his divine sense couldn't pass through the area shrouded by the rain clouds. Coupled with the heavy rain, his vision was blurred. He simply didn't know what was going on inside. Damn it. Damn Jinren he. The middle-aged man's face was ferocious as he growled, I've already told you that the Black Jiao's origin is mysterious. If you can avoid being enemies with him, then don't be enemies with him. But for a mere gifted idiot, you dare to fight the Black Jiao head-on. What a big deal. A moment later, a white bone carriage stood in the air. A pale-faced man in black poked his head out of the carriage, glanced at the middle-aged man, and said in a hoarse voice, I've asked. Lord Sung said that this time the Black Jiao was really provoked by Jinren he. With our strength, we can't pass through these rain clouds. Lord Sung said that even if he wanted to pass through here, he would have to pay a great price. He wants us to go back home and not cause any more trouble. Fart. The middle-aged man roared with a gloomy face, those of you who have successors naturally don't care, but my inheritance has strict requirements. After 600 years, I've only met such a good seedling. You and I, although many times stronger than those in the Kongming realm, our lifespans are limited. Compared to those masters, how many 600 years can we have? The black-clothed man gently shook his head and said with a helpless expression, then what can you do? Right now, even Lord Song doesn't want to interfere. With our cultivation, let's just forget about it. We'll just treat it as if we didn't accept this disciple. Moreover, the general trend is about to change. There will be countless geniuses in the future. Are you still afraid that your inheritance will be cut off? Humph. The middle-aged man snorted as if he didn't hear these words at all. Who didn't know that the general trend had changed? It wouldn't be long before a new era began. Countless geniuses would spring up like bamboo shoots after the rain. However, that was not the case. Geniuses were destined to rise in the Great Era. Even an immortal character like Lord Sung would think of a way to recruit them. So what if he thought highly of some people? The black-clothed man shook his head and saw that the middle-aged man didn't take his advice seriously. He retracted his head and drove the carriage back in the direction he came from. Although his own disciples were also trapped in the rain at the moment, he was not short of disciples to such an extent, so he directly left. If this matter was over and the little guy was still alive, it would naturally be a good thing. Even if he died, it would not be a big deal. Anyway, he would not jump out to make a feud with Lin Yuan. May I ask if you are the Blackwater Dragon King of the Northern Frontier? I am Li Guhong of a lower immortal sect, please meet me. After the black-clothed man left, the middle-aged man hesitated for a while before opening his mouth and shouting. Lin Yuan curled his lips and sneered, this king has already sent a visiting card, and only today did he personally come to the door. I originally thought that they would be faster, but I didn't expect that now that things can't be cleaned up, they came to the door. Speaking of this, Lin Yuan sneered again and said in a strange tone, if they had come earlier or delivered a message, there would have been enough time for them to take the disciple away. But now that things have developed to this point, they can't see any benefits from this, so they want to see this king and ask for a favor. There are many miraculous pills in this world, but there is no medicine for regret. Chapter 807. However, the traveling immortal sect is not easy to deal with. Taotia's expression changed slightly. He narrowed his eyes and said, in my boss's world, the traveling immortal sect also exists. These guys are very strange. Strictly speaking, they should be itinerant cultivators. Each of them has their own inheritance, territory, and opportunities. Usually, they don't like each other. It's not rare for the branches of the traveling immortal sect to fight each other. However, when they encounter an external enemy that they can't deal with, the branches will be unprecedentedly united. They will even help the other branches at all costs. Lin Yuan was silent. There were many forces that transcended worlds, and he knew of a few of them. However, almost all of these powerful existences had taken two different paths after the demon court was destroyed. Either they hid in the mortal world like Ravenfield Manor and formed a guild-like organization. Otherwise, they would hide in the mountains and rivers. Unless something big happened, they would never show themselves. The traveling immortal sect was still active in the world as usual. Obviously, the force behind them was much stronger than other forces of the same level. Then what do you say? Lin Yuan asked indifferently. Give them face? Tao Tai raised his finger and pointed at Lin Yuan. He laughed and said, "What does it have to do with me? This is the trouble you caused. Unless you plan to go up the mountain to solve the problem yourself, otherwise. I will not let go of those little guys." Got it. Go ahead. Lin Yuan nodded slightly and replied indifferently. Tao Tai was slightly stunned. He tilted his head and looked at Lin Yuan in confusion. He did not understand what Lin Yuan was thinking. However, he quickly adjusted his attitude and turned into a cloud of blue mist, enveloping the Cloud Crane Temple. Lin Yuan turned around indifferently and walked in the direction of the middle-aged man. Guardian of the Heaven Gate? Cultivator of the Dao Initiation Realm? He was just a so-so. The various forces in this world were very afraid of his existence. They coveted his resources but did not have the courage to fall out with him directly. They were afraid of the demon court behind him. But other than that, did these guardians of the Heaven Gate really take him seriously? Obviously not. When the northern frontier developed the Hengduan Mountains, Lin Yuan was in charge of all the errands. With a wave of their hands, the guardians of the heavenly gates took a large portion of the profits from Lin Yuan. In fact, there was no lack of people who wanted to pull Lin Yuan onto their worship. While they absorbed the large amount of benefits that Lin Yuan brought to them, they also hoped that Lin Yuan would be their cannon fodder and cut off the benefits from the other guardians of the heavenly gates. Lin Yuan flipped the table with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas because the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had shown their greed on their faces. They had no intention of giving Lin Yuan any face at all. They wanted to demand everything that Lin Yuan had worked hard for. From this point of view, although the guardians of the Heavenly Gate gave Lin Yuan some face, when it came to drinking blood and eating meat, they did not have the slightest intention of being polite. However, they restrained themselves and did not dare to ask Lin Yuan to work for free. Firstly, they were afraid of the demon court that might exist behind Lin Yuan. Secondly, they were afraid that the other guardians of the Heavenly Gates would fall out with them. However, this was not because they were afraid of Lin Yuan at all. This bad habit was obviously not good and had to be changed. The existence of rules was naturally necessary, but no rules could restrain a true superior. The current Lin Yuan was no longer the black snake with an unstable foundation in the northern frontier. In the past, he had to be afraid of too many people and could only bow his head. However, now, not everyone was qualified to make him bow his head. At the very least, Dao integration cultivators were not qualified. Dao integration cultivators were only at the standard of ordinary demon kings in the endless sea. As for existences like demon kings, how many times had Lin Yuan offended them? The curtain of rain parted. Lin Yuan stood in the air with his hands behind his back. He looked at Li Guhong expressionlessly and said indifferently, "You have 3 breaths of time." Scram. You. Li Guhong's momentum faltered. Clearly, he did not expect Lin Yuan's attitude to be like this. In addition, from today onwards, Wandering Immortal Sect, Bone King Sect, Purple Dress Association, and other forces will no longer receive any benefits from the northern frontier. The forces under your name will also have to prepare to move in advance. If there are still people active in the northern frontier when they move south and establish the so-called 7th dynasty, don't blame me for not warning you. Without waiting for the middle-aged man to speak, Lin Yuan waved his hand as if he was shooing away flies. Isn't the Dragon King's table manners a little too ugly? Li Guhong's expression darkened slightly. He gritted his teeth and smiled. His eyes also turned cold. He originally only wanted to save the disciple he had his eyes on. He did not expect Lin Yuan to not discuss this matter with him at all. Instead, with a wave of his hand, he directly kicked out the forces led by a few Dao initiation realm cultivators from the group of cake eaters. If he just admitted it like this, the loss would be too great. The monthly income of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce was almost comparable to the annual income of any dynasty. When Lin Yuan swallowed the remaining territories of the Shenwu dynasty, with his means, there was no guarantee that he would not combine the Hengduan mountain range and the endless sea to create even greater benefits. Even an immortal existence would not dare to say that he did not care about these resources. Now, Black Jiao opened his mouth and wanted to kick him out. Based on what? My table manners are ugly? Lin Yuan smiled and shook his head. He said indifferently, when this king was developing the northern frontier, you came to him and directly asked for a large amount of benefits. Did this king have the slightest hesitation? Because from then on, this king knew that there is only one sin in this world, and that is being weak. The weak side has never had the right to make decisions, right? This kind of thing was like a disease. It looked strange, but in reality, the only incurable disease in this world was poverty. In his previous life, even if he contracted a strange disease that could not be cured with the current medical technology, he could still seal himself in ice. Only when the medical technology could cure the disease would he be able to thaw it. On the other hand, the problem in the cultivation world was the same. There was never a problem that could not be solved. If there was, it was only because they were not strong enough. When Lin Yuan was weak, the Heavenly Gate Guardians could take the lion's share by opening their mouths. Now that Lin Yuan had become stronger, he could naturally open his mouth and kick out some of the Heavenly Gate Guardians who were weaker than him. Insignificant, Li Guhong's expression darkened. He gritted his teeth and wanted to say something. You have one breath's time. If you don't get out of here, this king will take it as a declaration of war. Lin Yuan shrugged indifferently and said indifferently, this king is not his original body anyway. Even if you kill this body, you can't hurt this king's foundation. But in the future, when I lead my army to the south, it will be the day that your legacy ends. You can try and see if this king can do such a thing. Chapter 808. Could the Black Jiao do something as evil as destroying someone's inheritance? The answer was, of course, yes. Because it had done such things many times before. It seemed that in the eyes of the Black Jiao, there were only two kinds of people in the world. One was those who could be killed, and the other was those who could not be killed for the time being. Now, these forces with Dao initiation realm cultivators had become people who could be killed in Lin Yuan's eyes. Li Guhong flung his sleeves and said with a cold face, fine. Since we can't agree, I will give face to the demon court today and let the matter of that child go. But if you dare to cut off the offerings, I will see how a little Black Jiao of the northern frontier can make an enemy of the guardians of the Heavenly Gate. Rumble. Another clap of thunder boomed. Half of Lin Yuan's face was illuminated by lightning, making him look like a god. The other half of his face was hidden in the darkness under the dark clouds. His expression could not be seen, but it seemed to be full of malice. What a pity, Lin Yuan shook his head and looked at Li Guhong, who was gradually disappearing, and returned to the rain. If not for the fact that the breakthrough mission had been triggered, Li Guhong's words would have triggered it, right? It did not take much effort to kill. Tao Tai killed demon kings like killing chickens. Could it not kill a Dao initiation realm cultivator? On the other hand, Lin Yuan still did not know where to start the mission to make the Red Dust Union sincerely submit to him. He turned into a white streak in the air and flew directly toward the Cloud Crane Temple. Before he got close, he smelled the scent of blood. Glancing around, Lin Yuan frowned and landed in front of the Cloud Crane Temple. There were many insect corpses on the ground, almost covering the entrance of the temple in a blue sea. These bugs were originally tiny and undetectable. Only when their numbers reached a certain point would they become visible to the naked eye. Tao Tai suffered a loss. He remembered that when he was in the endless sea, in the face of the ancient lizard god's divine power, these insects were also constantly collapsing and devouring. However, they barely managed to survive because of their strong reproductive ability. At that time, the insects did not fall to the point where the ground was littered with insect corpses. This Taoist master who cultivated an evil method, most likely had other means hidden, which made Tao Tai suffer a big loss. He didn't even deal with the insect corpses on the ground before he hurriedly smashed the gate of the Cloud Crane Temple and rushed in. He was obviously extremely angry. Thinking of this, Lin Yuan's eyes turned cold. Clearly, Reverend He had been hiding in the Cloud Crane Temple, not because he could not run, but because he did not want to. Otherwise, after Lin Yuan killed Yao Ming with one strike, he could have left Lei Chuming behind and escaped through the means he had prepared beforehand, instead of squatting in the Cloud Crane Temple and foolishly waiting for Lin Yuan to set up an inescapable trap. A person who practiced evil arts might not care about other lives, but he would definitely value his own life. The evil array connected to the spirit veins of Mount Cloud Crane was the best example. With Reverend He's means, it was definitely not enough to set up an evil array that could enrage the system and the will of the world. However, since he had the means to control this evil array, it meant that he had hired someone to set it up. According to this line of thought, it was reasonable that he would prepare other killing moves in the temple. Fortunately, he did not rush in recklessly. Otherwise, if he had to deal with the trap that even Tao Tai had suffered a loss, his physical body would have been destroyed on the spot. Tao Tai, how's the situation? Lin Yuan stood outside the door, without the slightest intention of rushing in. Instead, he opened his mouth and asked. Although he could sense that the Tao Tai was still alive, his eye of the god could not see anything inside the Cloud Crane Temple, just like the last time when the Red Dust Taoist appeared. After all, his cultivation realm had not caught up. These cultivators of the Kongming realm must have a lot of secret techniques. Coupled with the gap between their realms, if he was prepared, he would indeed become a blind man. However, although Tao Tai was still alive, it did not mean that he had broken the other party's means. What if it was another evil array? Don't come in, this place is very strange. I've already subdued this old thing, just come in. The two voices, one at the front and one at the back, both belonged to Tao Tai, but the meaning expressed was completely different. Lin Yuan's face darkened and his eyes were filled with killing intent. He lifted his right foot and instantly put it down. He said in a cold voice, Reverend He, you could have avoided this disaster, but things have already come to this point, it seems unreasonable that you don't die. If you give up resisting now, I can still give you a chance to reincarnate. Otherwise. Heh. Reverend He's voice sounded, and he sneered, Black Jiao, if you retreat obediently, this old man will not haggle with you over the hatred of killing my son. I can also give Lei Chuming to you. However, you'd better not lie to a child like this. If you have the ability to kill me, come in and try. As soon as his voice fell, Lin Yuan suddenly laughed and said, Since you've admitted defeat, then I'm relieved. I'll wait at the door of your broken Taoist temple and see if the means you've arranged can really let you survive until the seas run dry and the rocks decay. An evil cultivator who looked down on the lives of other creatures and only cared about his own life. He probably didn't take the matter of the Lu family's ancestor to heart from the very beginning. It was only when he met Lin Yuan that he casually mentioned it. If it was impossible, he would never say anything about revenge. If he really did not fear Tao Tai, he would not have loosened his mouth at all. Good, Black Jiao, don't tell me you don't know when to let people off. This old man has already given up his face, yet you still want to pursue and beat him. Do you really think this old man is made of mud? Reverend He's tone was flustered and exasperated as he shouted angrily, If you don't retreat, this old man will personally pinch Lei Chuming to death and let you come here in vain. Okay, then you can pinch him to death. Lin Yuan still maintained a cold smile on his face, as if he did not care about Reverend He's threat at all. Reverend He was aware of every movement on Mount Cloud Crane. Lin Yuan knew this from the beginning to the end, so he deliberately said those words for Reverend He to hear. There was a time limit for gods to descend and fulfill their long-cherished wishes, but there was no limit to the methods used. If those enemies marked by the original body died during this time, as long as the news could be confirmed, it would be considered as fulfilling their long-cherished wishes, and they would not have to be killed with their own hands. Lei Chuming would definitely die. As for how he died, it did not matter. On the other hand, he would never let Reverend He go. If such an evil cultivator did not experience pain and die, his thoughts would not be clear. After all, the existence of such an evil technique was undoubtedly challenging the authority of the Netherworld King. If he retreated just like this, the trouble in his future cultivation would not be small. In addition, the will of the world had already issued a mission. How could he let go of Reverend He, the only clue, and retreat? What kind of wage earner would directly look at his boss and say that he was quitting when his body was not strong enough? Chapter 809. With his arms crossed in front of his chest, Lin Yuan quietly stood at the entrance of the temple. Not long after, a tall figure walked out from the void behind Lin Yuan. Another old acquaintance. The carrier of the laws, Lin Lisheng. This time, Lin Lisheng's appearance was clearly much better than last time when he was holding a black spear and wearing an animal skin skirt. At least he was wearing normal clothes and looked like a disciple of a large sect that came out to train. But this time, Lin Lisheng shouldn't be here to kill him. After all, the system had given Lin Yuan an example before. Although the world's will and the world's laws were different things, the AI of the world's will had recognized him as one of its own. So even if the rules wanted to kill him, they wouldn't kill Lin Yuan, who was dragged into the whitelist. Lin Lisheng didn't seem to have any intention of paying attention to Lin Yuan. He just walked to Lin Yuan's side and turned his head to look at the Cloud Crane Temple. Then, he walked to the right and swung the black spear in his hand, continuously knocking on the outer wall. When he stopped, the air around him was already slightly distorted. Then, he took a step and directly disappeared from Lin Yuan's sight. Lin Yuan, TSK. So professional. In the eyes of this carrier of the laws, it's fine as long as you complete the task set by the rules. Ah. Black Jiao, what did you do? In the Cloud Crane Temple, enlightened master, he suddenly screamed. A moment later, a black shadow shot out from the Cloud Crane Temple. In a panic, Lin Yuan only saw an unfamiliar face. Moreover, the face was pale and there was still black blood at the corner of the mouth. The aura on the body was also weak, like a candle flame swaying in the wind, about to be extinguished at any time. He can't escape. Don't kill him so quickly. I still have things to ask him. Lin Yuan walked toward the Cloud Crane Temple. When he passed by Tao Tai, he whispered softly. The inescapable net outside was still there. Even a Dao Initiation Realm cultivator could only be helpless and furious. Even if a Void Realm cultivator escaped to the edge of the rain, what could he do? It was nothing more than more despair. Tao Tai gently nodded his head. No change in expression could be seen on his face, but his pace had slowed down. He was like a cat that had eaten its fill but was still catching mice to play with. His body was full of malice. Plop. Lin Yuan had just walked into the Cloud Crane Temple when a middle-aged man with a face full of fear knelt on the ground. A face that was 70% similar to Lei Qiusheng's, just that he lacked Lei Qiusheng's domineering aura. Even Lei Qiusheng's eyes were more unruly than his. This Qing Peng king who had ruled over China during the Xinwu dynasty looked like a middle-aged man whose edges and corners had been ground down by life. He did not have the slightest bit of the aura of a king. Guan Zhaoshan? As if he had just recognized the owner of the face in front of him, Lei Chuming felt his breathing become slightly sluggish. Previously, when Jinren he called out Black Jiao, he did not think much of it. He only thought that some enemy of Jinren he had come to visit. Even when Tao Tai killed his way into the Cloud Crane Temple, she did not show the slightest bit of fear. This was because he was sure that the other party was not here for him. This fire would not burn him. The only thing that gave him a headache was that if Jinren he was defeated, he would completely lose his umbrella of protection and be directly exposed to the blade of the Red Dust Gang. I am not Guan Zhaoshan. I am just anyone. Lin Yuan smiled slightly, but his eyes were filled with killing intent. He said in a deep voice, following the final will of a girl who was willing to erase herself because of hatred, I have come to kill you. Don't. Everything can be discussed. Lei Chuming slowly raised his hands, trying to show that he was harmless. He squeezed out a smile that was uglier than crying and said to Lin Yuan, this one is the Qingpeng king of the Shenwu dynasty. Even if the Shenwu dynasty is about to be destroyed, this one still has the support of various sects in the south. As long as the right time moves, this one can rebuild the Shenwu dynasty at any time. If you are willing to stop, this one is willing to give you a high position. No, this one is willing to rule the country with you. When he said, give you a high position, Lin Yuan's expression did not change at all. Only then did Lei Chuming's complexion change and he changed his words and said, rule the country together. Lin Yuan pondered for a moment, glanced meaningfully at Lei Chuming, and said doubtfully, after coming to the south, I have always had a question. Are you really Lei Chuming's brother? What? What do you mean? Lei Chuming was slightly startled. Apparently, he did not understand what this question had to do with the current situation. Just now, Jinren he called me Black Jiao. This king does not believe that you did not hear it. So are you really stupid, or are you just lying to yourself? You must be really stupid, right? After all, that's all you've done. If it were not for your tricks in the dark, the Guan family would not have been destroyed by the Flying Star sect. It seems that you have cleared the biggest stumbling block for your path to imperial power. But in reality, this kind of action is called destroying your own Great Wall. The Lei family is also an aristocratic family. You should be very clear about how aristocratic families operate. The threshold for cultivators is very high. Not everyone has the qualifications to cultivate. Even if you have enough resources, without talent and without martial arts, you can only be a mortal. Even in the aristocratic families, only a small group of people were able to cultivate. The rest were the children of wealthy families, and they were only slightly wealthier than ordinary people. These people were the main composition of the aristocratic families. They were scattered to different positions to contribute to the dynasty and their families. No matter what, aristocratic families do not want the world to be in chaos. This is because most of the time, the benefits of the dynasty cannot be compared to those of aristocratic families. When the world is in chaos, the aristocratic families will be directly affected. Unless it is those who are driven by ambition and want to go further, aristocratic families will have to pay more than the so-called imperial family for the world's peace. You could have appeased the aristocratic families of the south and gathered their strength to suppress the sects, turning them into a knife in your hand. But you chose the stupidest path. You actually joined forces with the sects to suppress the aristocratic families. You can lie to yourself and say that this is for your own imperial power and for the stability of the world. Only by destroying the old aristocratic families can you let the aristocratic families that are willing to follow you ascend to the throne. However, you have never thought that the destruction of the old aristocratic families will cause the aristocratic families under you who have hopes of becoming the new aristocratic families to grieve. It will cause the sects that are supposed to be the weapons in your hands to break the rules and surpass the imperial court. Even Lei Chiosheng and this king have the same way of dealing with aristocratic families and sections. It is true that both sides must be weakened. But the aristocratic families can cooperate, but the sects must be destroyed. Otherwise, the imperial power will be shaken and the world will fall. Lin Yuan walked towards Lei Chuming step by step. His eyes were filled with killing intent. He said coldly, although you did not directly participate in the destruction of the Guan family, your actions make it so that you will not die in vain. Chapter 8:10. Perhaps knowing that he had no way out, Lei Chuming's eyes were no longer angry. Instead, he sneered. I'm stupid. I don't know that although aristocratic families are despicable, they are still more trustworthy than sections. Lei Chuming shook his head, a hint of desolation appearing on his face. I heard that after Lei Chiosheng was usurped by Sky Demon, he did not die. Instead, he hid in the northern frontier. Now, not only has his cultivation improved greatly, he has even entered the Northern Frontier Military Academy as a teacher to teach the art of war. Occasionally, he will also go to the Political Academy to give lectures. His life is not bad. Speaking to here, he paused, then continued, but his nature will not change. This person, if he meets someone who can suppress him, like the previous emperor of the 10,000 Swords dynasty, then he will be the twin stars of 10,000 Swords. He will be as famous as Yan Xingqi, the god of war who can defeat the Frost Mirror Barbarian and the Qing River Navy. But if he meets a ruler like Xie Xinghai, who has great ambition but little ability, then he will change and become the divine martial emperor who usurps the throne. Lin Yuan's outstretched right hand paused. This Lei Chuming was a little interesting. He directly called Lei Qiusheng by his name, and not called him Big Brother. A person who did not want to die could find all kinds of excuses to beg for mercy. That Lei Qiusheng who was currently serving the northern frontier was undoubtedly a breakthrough. If he played this card, even if Lin Yuan would not stop, he would at least care about their relationship and would not kill them all. At the very least, he would leave behind a bloodline inheritance. But Lei Chuming would rather let Lin Yuan do as he pleased than borrow Lei Qiusheng's power. This pair of brothers, there must be a story behind them. At the end of the day, Lei Qiusheng is very capable and ambitious. Once he grasps authority, he doesn't want to let it go. Instead, he wants more authority. Unless the person above him is very strong, so strong that he feels despair and can crush him in every aspect, he will be willing to serve. For someone who values authority so much, have you ever wondered why he would allow me to set up my own little imperial court? For so many years, I've been acting like a country within a country. Do you think he can't see it? That year, when the army was mobilized, he sent out a surprise attack on the Wanjian imperial capital. He ordered me to lead the main force to continue the advance, but we ran into the fallen Star Army at their peak. One group wanted to usurp the throne, the other group wanted to enter the capital to rescue the emperor. When these two groups met, it was bound to be a life and death situation. Lei Qiusheng and I share the same mother. Since we were young, our food and clothing were ordinary, and our skills were ordinary. Although he was slightly stronger than me, it wasn't by much. You know, there is only one dragon throne. So, from then on, he wanted to get rid of me. But at that time, I didn't understand this point. Because I didn't want to be the emperor. Or rather, I didn't think that we would be the ones to win. After all, the Zhou imperial family is not a soft persimmon. They dared to raise Lei Qiusheng and Yan Xingqi, these two fierce tigers, and let them lead an army each. Their foundation can be imagined. If it wasn't for Zhou Xinghai's ambition but lack of talent, and losing the inheritance, wealth, and reputation that the Zhou imperial family's ancestors left for their descendants, even if Lei Qiusheng and Yan Xingqi joined hands, they might not be able to gain any advantage. At that time, I still treated him as my blood brother. When he told me that he wanted to rebel, I didn't even think about it and agreed. I didn't think that things would go smoother than I expected. It can be seen that Lei Qiusheng had made a lot of arrangements in those years. The only variable was Yan Xingqi, a man who was called the god of war together with Lei Qiusheng. When I faced Yan Xingqi, he didn't show any strange emotions. It was obvious that he had a card up his sleeve. It was as if getting rid of Yan Xingqi was as easy as getting rid of the soldiers we had dealt with along the way. However, not long after that, I found out that I was wrong, very wrong. Because the elite troops that Lei Qiusheng brought with him were the most loyal troops that he had personally trained. They were also the elites of the entire army. They were the only troops that could fight against the falling Star Army. Although there were a lot of soldiers and generals left in my hands, the elites. Even if I had 10 times more soldiers and horses than Yan Xingqi, I could only delay them for 5 days. When I saw my soldiers and generals being cut down by them like harvesting wheat. Lei Chuming paused again. His eyes became a little bitter. He said sternly, I finally understood. My good brother wanted to use Yan Xingqi's hand to get rid of me, the threat. Lin Yuan's eyes changed slightly. When the cunning rabbit is killed, the hound is cooked. Such stories, in his eyes, were not few in number in history. Almost every emperor who founded a country had done such things. As a result, the 4 words, achievements that shake the ruler, had become a sharp blade that hung over the heads of countless good ministers and generals since ancient times. Want to serve the country and show your ambition? You can, but you have to be careful. When you make everyone praise you instead of praising the emperor, then your time of death will come. It might even be the kind of death where your whole family will be wiped out. Since ancient times, it was true that being with the emperor was like being with a tiger. But Lin Yuan had never thought that a person could be so heartless. Since ancient times, there were many examples of people who did not have family ties. But most of them were brothers fighting for the throne. But who would directly kill his own brother when he might not even be able to become the emperor? Until I was defeated and captured, I only had this thought. After all, when death is near, it is inevitable to have some resentment, isn't it? Lei Chuming's eyes were filled with anger. Lei Chuming's eyes were filled with murderous intent as he hissed, but Yan Xingqi didn't kill me, he only tied me to the back of a horse and dragged me all the way to the outskirts of the imperial capital. He wanted Lei Chioxing to open the city gates and surrender, otherwise, he would kill me in front of everyone. But Lei Chioxing hid in the city and didn't show himself. I was then stripped naked by Yan Xingqi and hung on a flagpole for 3 days under the scorching sun. Is that so? Lin Yuan's voice seemed to have a hint of sadness. On the night my cultivation foundation was destroyed, even Yan Xingqi was disappointed in Lei Chioxing. He planned to kill me the next day and then attack the city with all his strength. But in the end, Lei Chioxing suddenly attacked at night and caught Yan Xingqi and the Fallen Star Army off guard. With one battle, the Jiao royal family, the Fallen Star Army and me were all eliminated. I survived, but it was no different from being dead. Lei Chioxing conferred me the title of King of the Green Earth and turned a blind eye to all my actions. It wasn't because he couldn't see, but because he knew that I wasn't a threat to him. The earth energy in my body was disappearing little by little. My cultivation base was getting lower and lower. Under such circumstances, I did not even dare to recruit a strong follower. I was afraid that someone would take over my place. How could I be a threat to Lei Chioxing? Lei Chuming opened his mouth and laughed out loud. Gnashing his teeth, he said, I hate it. Chapter 8:11. Winner takes all. Lin Yuan's gaze was still as calm as an ancient well. Do you really think that the sects in the south were supported by me? In the north, there was the Hengduan mountain range and the Shuangjin barbarians suppressing the local forces. Lei Chioxing didn't need to worry about it. In the Central Plains, he was personally overseeing it. In the imperial court, although the aristocratic families and sects were coexisting, under his methods, both sides didn't get along. In addition, there were the families of generals and nobles around him. The imperial court of the Shenwu dynasty was under his control. But what about the south? Although the situation in the south wasn't as bad as the north, there were many forests and rivers. Not only was there a lot of demon beasts, there were even more experts in the forest than in the north. Because of the developed waterways, the cities were prosperous, and the business of the dark side was even more numerous. Under such a disaster, no one would be able to raise their heads. Do you think Lei Chioxing can see it? Of course he can. Why doesn't he care? Because these are all problems that he deliberately left for me. If I can unify the south under the condition that my cultivation is half crippled, go to the north and take revenge for the old and new grudges that have accumulated over these years, then I can be considered as having the ability to be a better emperor than him. Lei Chuming wiped away the sweat and tears on his forehead and said with a bitter smile, I'm not saying this to ask for a way out. I'm just telling you what kind of poisonous snake you've been raising by your side. Under Lei Chuming's gaze, Lin Yuan stepped forward and pressed one hand on Lei Chuming's head. The vital energy in his body surged, directly shattering Lei Chuming's meridians and bones. Then he turned and walked towards the rain outside the door. Lei Chuming maintained his kneeling position and looked up at Lin Yuan's back. He smiled and said, In my life, I could be considered an extremely powerful official with great power. After the Wanjian dynasty was destroyed, there wasn't a single day that I was happy. I Lei Chuming didn't finish his words. The last trace of life had been extinguished. After confirming that the wound was completely healed, Lin Yuan stepped into the rain. A cold glint flashed across his eyes. He was not willing to raise a poisonous snake by his side, especially one like Lei Qiusheng, a poisonous snake with true ability. If it was someone like Jiu Wuying, whose ambition was greater than his ability, Lin Yuan could still manage one or two things. But Lei Qiusheng, a character like Chao Mengde, was not someone that anyone could manage. He couldn't possibly change Lei Qiusheng's blood, could he? This guy wasn't undeserving of his punishment. He really dared to drag him down with him. However, since he was entrusted with the task, he had to be loyal to it. The war god of the northern frontier, who was as famous as Lei Qiusheng, was willing to die for the northern frontier because he had asked Lin Yuan for a favor. Don't kill Lei Qiusheng. Like him, he would be trapped in the northern frontier for the rest of his life. Slowly suppressing the rising killing intent in his heart, the corners of Lin Yuan's mouth curled up slightly. His mind turned, and he sensed that in this inescapable net, there was a sorry figure that had been forced into a dead end by Tao Tai. With a tap of his foot, his figure arrived in an instant. Black Jiao. What kind of demonic technique did you use? Why can't I get out? As soon as he saw Lin Yuan appear, Jinrenhe's eyes immediately turned blood red. This curtain of rain was even stranger than he thought. No matter how fast he was, he couldn't rush out of the area covered by the curtain of rain. It was like there was an invisible wall blocking here. Even if he used all his strength, it was like a clay ox entering the sea, instantly disappearing into nothingness. Such a method, he had never heard of it before. I am a demon. What's wrong with knowing one or two demonic techniques? Lin Yuan grinned at Jinrenhe and said in a cold voice, but I didn't come to listen to you question me, nor to see how you die. I have a question for you. It's up to you whether you answer or not, but I will only give you this one chance. If I answer your question, will you not kill me? Jinrenhe's expression changed and he asked expectantly. After cultivating to the Kongming realm, it was reasonable to say that he was already standing at the top of the cultivation world. Even if he joined those first-class forces, he would at least have the position of an elder. If he joined some imperial court, he would directly enjoy endless glory, splendor, and wealth. It was ridiculous that he had made a mistake. He didn't expect that this Black Jiao would really dare to come to his door and commit murder. If he could live, who would be willing to die? You cultivated demonic techniques. Regardless of whether you harmed humans or demons, you have interfered with the 6 paths of reincarnation. This is a serious crime, and your punishment is to have your body and soul destroyed. Even those formidable guardians of the heavenly gate might not dare to say anything. How do you have the face to ask me to let you live? Lin Yuan crossed his arms and asked with a cold smile, listen to the question carefully. Who created the protective array of your Mount Cloud crane? Don't tell me it's you. You're just at the Kongming realm, so you naturally can't do it. Also, don't tell me it was left behind by a predecessor. The Cloud Crane Monastery only has a history of over 20 years, and this great array was built no more than 5 years ago. Since I can break the array, you can't lie to me. These words were purely a bluff. Lin Yuan naturally didn't know anything about arrays. He could only break the array by relying on the system's cheating. However, there were also people who were good at arrays in the Northern Frontier's Ministry of Works. Every great array needed a corresponding arrangement. For example, the demonic array of Mount Cloud Crane, which was connected to the spirit vein, was still fine. At the very least, there was no need to fill it with spirit stones or manually inject spirit chi every time the great array was activated. However, the other array tools and array patterns all needed to be repaired and replaced. Just like the teleportation arrays in the Endless Sea, they were gradually used less or even stopped because ordinary sea demon clans didn't have the means to maintain them. If perfected he didn't have the means to repair or maintain the great array, he wouldn't be able to activate this great array at all. At least in this world, there was no magical array that could be set up and run for millions of years. Even if there was, it was brought over from the primeval world. Perfected he wasn't even a guardian of the heavenly gate, let alone being related to the ancient demon court. Humph. Since you're not willing to let me go, do you expect me to answer your question? Perfected He's expression turned gloomy as he asked in a bad mood. As a person who cultivated demonic arts, Perfected He most likely didn't have a bottom line. Therefore, when the opportunity to betray others in exchange for his own survival was placed in front of him, he definitely wouldn't hesitate. Unless that person was someone he couldn't afford to offend, and Lin Yuan definitely couldn't afford to offend him either. That was why he chose to play dumb. However, Lin Yuan was like this: even if he wanted to cooperate, he couldn't find a reason to convince himself. A mere void netherworld realm? Has your true body reached the desolate demon realm? How could this black flood dragon's tone be so arrogant to this extent? Since you're not willing to answer me, then forget it. Lin Yuan spread out his hands indifferently and said with a cold smile, remember, you chose to have your body and soul destroyed. Chapter 8:12. When did I choose to have my body and soul destroyed? Spiritual master, he roared. He knew very well that he was no match for the Taotai. He did not even have the ability to kidnap Lin Yuan in front of the Taotai. He was able to restrain the Taotai because of the second evil formation in the temple. Even a cultivator of the Tao initiation realm would be seriously injured if they stepped into that formation unprepared. However, the Taotai only swayed a few times and withstood it. He only became more irritable. This kind of expert was not someone he could deal with. Therefore, after the second evil array was broken by Lin Yuan outside by some unknown means, he decisively gave up the idea of fighting Taotai head-on. Even when he saw Lin Yuan when he went out, he didn't dare to waste time attacking or looting. He could only grit his teeth and escape into the distance. But who would have thought that this reign would be so strange? The problem was, if he died, he would die. But to have his body and soul destroyed was too much. If his body died, he could still take over the body of a living person. Although he would have to pay a big price, he could at least live. Lin Yuan's face turned cold. He said in a deep voice, I said before that you cultivated an evil method and refined the souls of living beings into elixirs to assist your cultivation. You interfered with the 6 paths of reincarnation. With such a serious crime, you deserve to have your body and soul destroyed. Even if you find the guardians of the gate of heaven, do you think they will dare to object? Although the Tianwu world was not a complete world, it was most likely not a fragment of the Eldritch world. That was because the visitors from the Eldritch world had entered through the gate of heaven. They did not exist when the world was born. Coupled with the self-will of this incomplete world, it could even fight with his cheat, the incomplete origin of the heavenly way. The will of a world was not that strong. At least, it had to wait until the world was complete before it could evolve into the heavenly way. It could give birth to its own intelligence and follow the supreme rules, to make rules for cultivators to follow. After the green leaf water lotus grew, the wild beasts born from the soil and water dared to provoke him, a demonic beast. That was not in accordance with the rules of nature. The will of a world was a lower existence than the heavenly way. It was wrong to provoke the heavenly way, not to mention that the origin of the heavenly way had been at a disadvantage several times in a row. Therefore, this world should have been born on its own. If the heavenly Tao was born in the future, it would be an existence that could stand on equal footing with the complete great desolate world's heavenly Tao. Although this world was not complete, the will of the world had still been born, and the rules were eternal. Those great cultivators with top-notch cultivation would definitely receive guidance from the will of the world and know what they could and could not do, just like how they had joined hands to guard the heavenly gates. It might not be voluntary, but they had to do it. Something like Perfected He's interference with the 6 realms of reincarnation was undoubtedly a taboo. The guardians of the heavenly gate either did not know about this rule or were too lazy to care about other people's business. However, Lin Yuan, the future Netherworld King, was involved in this matter. If he was not given a proper outcome, he would be punished by the heavens. What was heavenly punishment? Before Hongjun took control of the heavenly Tao, the heavenly punishment was a tribulation. Only after overcoming it could one live forever. After Hongjun took control of the heavenly Tao, the upper limit of cultivators became lower. The heavenly punishment was also changed to lightning tribulation by him. However, there was no Hongjun in this world. Lin Yuan dared to say that he might not be unable to withstand the lightning tribulation, but he did not dare to say that he could withstand the tribulation. Lin Yuan calmly took a few steps back and pulled a safe distance away from Perfected He. He was afraid that this old thing would not be able to accept it and would suddenly attack him. He had finally fulfilled Guan Zhaoshan's long-cherished wish. If he died in the hands of this old thing, wouldn't all his previous efforts be in vain? After pulling a distance away, Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and said, "I'll ask and you'll answer. Consider it atonement for your crimes. I can even let you die a good death. At least after you've endured the punishment of the netherworld, you can reincarnate and return to the world." Concepts like the 6 realms of reincarnation and the netherworld clearly did not exist in this world. However, the punishment of having one's body and soul destroyed did indeed exist. It was the cruelest punishment in the world. Perfected He, who was on good terms with the guardians of the heavenly gate, did not have enough cultivation. However, he was half a step into the real cultivation world. He still had some understanding of this secret that was not feared. Ling Yunzi is the Grand Supreme Elder of the Heavenly Justice Sect. This array was created by him. Perfected He's expression changed and he immediately exclaimed in a low voice. Death was not scary. For practitioners who had many tricks up their sleeves, they could take over another body and cultivate again. Even if they really died in a disaster, as long as they left behind a bit of their true spirit, they could arrange an evil situation like the Fire Kirin to be reborn. Furthermore, from examples like the Fire Kirin and Yang Qinglin, there were not many such existences, but they were definitely not few. Even if they did not have such methods, it did not matter. After all, this world did not have the Netherworld King, nor did it have the existence of the Netherworld God. After death, one's soul would still be taken by the heavenly axiom and would not become a demon that appeared due to various mistakes. However, when they were sent into the cycle of reincarnation, it was hard to guarantee that there would be some mistakes. This would allow them to be reborn with the innate wisdom and the memories of their previous lives. The truly scary thing was to die completely. This kind of death that did not even have the right to reincarnate was enough to defeat any existence that claimed that they were not afraid of death. D. Contact with the information of the person who set up the evil array. Mission progress updated, mission progress updated, mission changing, mission name, enforce Heaven's Will description. Now that you have further information about the evil array, please go to Heaven's Will and look for Ling Yunzi. No matter what method you use, get more information about the evil array from him. Mission reward, depends on the degree of completion. Punishment for failure, none. The system once again displayed 3 question marks, which made Lin Yuan feel flustered and exasperated. The big boss of the system had not even issued a mission, but someone else had issued a mission right in front of him and even modified it. How should he put it? Did it not care about its reputation? The corner of Lin Yuan's mouth twitched slightly as well. Good heavens, is this guy addicted to white girls? Although he did not find the person who set up the array and kill him, at least he participated in this chain mission and successfully completed the first stage of the mission. You should at least give me some rewards. D. The first stage of the mission has been detected to be completed. Reward, 5,000 points of incense power. Following another system notification, Lin Yuan's merit panel jumped quickly, and 5,000 points were added. All the expenses of using the skills during this period, including the heavenly downpour, were all reimbursed. Is she able to hear my thoughts? The boss is generous. The boss is a million women. Scumbag behavior. Now that the system could also hear Lin Yuan's thoughts, it once again displayed a question mark. Chapter 8:13. Lin Yuan just shrugged his shoulders at the system's harsh reprimand. Look at how others are looking at you. Aren't you ashamed at all? What's in those lectures that you gave? Look at the first mission that other people gave out. The first stage of the mission was 5,000 incense power. The system ignored Lin Yuan. Obviously, it was very angry with Lin Yuan. It now felt that it could even raise a horse on its head. I, the system big boss, the origin of the primitive heavenly Tao, was cuckolded. Young people don't talk about martial ethics. To be honest, how much was the reward of 5,000 incense power? In fact, it was not much. It could also take it out without any pressure. But when Lin Yuan ate this kind of reward, it must be a wave of wealth. It did not conform to the training plan of each stage. Moreover, this dog only needed to bribe Lin Yuan. At most, he would have to add the Celestial Emperor, who might not be born yet. But it was different. It had more than 9,000 hosts under its command. There was no comparison at all, okay? The will of the other worlds was also not so unethical. How could it be the same thing to train the chosen one and poach from the hands of a peer? He's yours. Enjoy to your heart's content, from the body to the soul. Eat clean. Lin Yuan reached out and patted Tao Tai on the shoulder, then patted the oil paper umbrella hanging behind him, and said with a smile, "When you finish eating the things here, let me know, and I will remove the rain here." As his voice fell, Lin Yuan took a step and passed through the rain, disappearing from Jin Renhe's sight. He was very busy and did not have time to waste here. "Black Jiao, you don't talk about morality, you don't keep your word, you, Jin Renhe's scream spread far and wide. At the same time. Northern Frontier, Donglin City. Li Zhong and Luo Su sat opposite each other. Both of their faces were expressionless, but the air was filled with a chill. Li Zhong put the cup in his hand on the table and said slowly, "Yan Xingqi is dead, the front line is broken, and the Blackwater army left by the Dragon King is almost completely wiped out. This matter, don't you plan to give me an explanation? After all, you are the mastermind of the death plan and also the executor. What's there to explain? Isn't it all within our expectations?" Luo Su smiled. His bandaged hands were still holding the cup, and he carefully blew on the hot tea. "It's indeed within our expectations, but the problem is that you didn't report the modification of the death plan to lure and kill the Sky Demon. You chose to carry it out without our consent. In the beginning, the benefits were not small. What's strange is that only a small part of your 4 groups ran into the Sky Demon. Even Zhao Guangchong, who was in a certain death situation, was chased by the Sky Demon for a while on the way back after burning the grain stockade. After that, the Sky Demon who was chasing them disappeared without a trace." Li Zhong's face was still expressionless, but his body was filled with murderous intent. He said in a cold voice, "Shouldn't Commander Luo give me an explanation for this matter?" There was a smile in Luo Su's eyes, but he just shook his head and didn't say anything. He naturally knew that Lin Yuan had the devil army in his hands. After all, the high-ranking officials in the embroidered uniform guards were also trained by Lin Yuan. He naturally knew about the existence of these classmates. However, this matter was one of the top-secret files. Without Lin Yuan's approval, he had the right to not reveal it to anyone. "Okay," I asked out of curiosity. "It's up to you whether you want to tell me or not. However, you can't avoid the other 2 matters." Li Zhong's eyes were cold. He slammed the table and said, "The Blackwater army was almost destroyed, not because of the front line, but because their retreat was blocked. There was no hope of returning to the northern frontier, so they could only grit their teeth and fight back to the front-line camp. That's why this tragedy happened." In addition, the death of Lin Yin from the association of the Demon Emperor was very strange. He was clearly reporting that he didn't encounter the Sky Demon, but suddenly there was no news. When he was found again, he was already a corpse. What's so strange about that? Luo Su pointed at his own head and said indifferently, "I'm also a human, not a god. I don't know how to arrange everything. Even if they are unlucky, you can push the responsibility to me?" "Li Zhong, what do you mean?" "Ha." Li Zhong laughed coldly. His face became gloomy. He raised his eyebrows and said, "What do I mean? The Blackwater army was blocked by the Sky Demon, and I have nothing to say. At most, it's your negligence. However, about Lin Yin, don't tell me that when the Sky Demon had the chance to capture someone alive, he would still choose to kill him. As for Zhao Guangchong, he went to a dead end. If not for the strange situation, he would have died. Therefore, according to your original arrangement, only you are safe. With this situation in front of me, it's hard for me not to suspect that this was not your arrangement. Luo. Do. The last 3 words were roared out by Li Zhong through gritted teeth. Obviously, he was on the verge of exploding in anger. Internal strife was actually not uncommon in the northern frontier. After all, there were many factions, and it was normal for them to cause trouble for each other. However, at this juncture, the northern frontier was already short of manpower. If there was still internal strife, it would be too much. Moreover, no matter how one looked at it, it seemed that Luo Su had bribed the Sky Demon to exchange the lives of these people for his own safety. Moreover, he had made the first move to gain the upper hand. He had directly killed Lin Yin, who was going to be one of his opponents, who would be in charge of the association of the Demon Emperor in the future. It was not hard to understand. Although Lin Yuan had played the role of Lin Yin in the beginning, now that there was a Lin Yin in the northern frontier to manage the association of the Demon Emperor, in Luo Su's eyes, it was inevitably another Sherdong. Luo Su calmly took a sip of tea, then frowned and said, "This tea is a little bad. I'm afraid it doesn't suit your status as the king of the northern frontier. Come to my place later, and let me have a chance to bribe my boss." "What do you mean?" Li Zhong's face grew gloomier. "Nothing." Luo Su put down his cup and said indifferently, "If I say that I'm innocent, you definitely won't believe me. However, if you can find evidence, should be on death row now, and not here watching you hit the table. Therefore, you will definitely continue to investigate this matter. If you find out that I'm innocent in the end, you and I will have a knot in our hearts. Therefore, you clearly don't like me. Therefore, I will try to please you so that you won't have such strong doubts about me next time. Isn't that normal?" At this point, Luo Su stood up, bent slightly, and looked down at Li Zhong. He said coldly, "What? Zhang Xiuzhu can give you gifts, but I can't. Is it because my things are dirty, or did you want to deal with me all along? Accepting Zhang Xiuzhu's gifts was just a show for the Dragon King?" Chapter 8:14. After saying this, Luo Su stood up straight again and sneered. "In the short term, there shouldn't be a large-scale war here, so I plan to go back and rest for a few days. You can investigate slowly and see if you can find evidence of me colluding with the Sky Demon. I have high hopes for you, King of the Northern Frontier, ha 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 ha." When he said the words, King of the Northern Frontier, Luo Su also emphasized them, as if to remind Li Zhong of something. But after saying this, Luo Su laughed and walked out, not giving Li Zhong any face at all. The rules of the Northern Frontier were right there. In name, the embroidered uniform guards were the King of the Northern Frontier's personal guards and eyes and ears. In reality, the embroidered uniform guards were directly responsible for Lin Yuan. The confidential files sent to Li Zhong were all things that Li Zhong could see with his authority. The two were actually of the same level. So Li Zhong could raise suspicions about Luo Su and start investigating. He could ask Luo Su not to interfere with any official business during this time, but he could not use any means of arrest or torture on Luo Su unless he had solid evidence in his hands. When Luo Su gave him face, he called him King of the Northern Frontier. When he didn't give him face, it was like now. And he had no way at all. Especially when he emphasized the words, King of the Northern Frontier. It was clearly to remind him that the one who had the final say in the Northern Frontier was not the King of the Northern Frontier. Unless the news of Lin Yuan's death came back, Li Zhong should first consider the fate of the two seniors before making any moves. Luo Su. Li Zhong's face was gloomy as he gritted his teeth and shouted this name. He was not surprised that Luo Su could find out that he had received a gift from Zhang Xiuzhu. This was because he had not concealed it from the beginning. He had called Luo Su here today not to help Zhang Xiuzhu but because this matter had been strange from beginning to end. Except for Zhao Guangchong's group, who had somehow managed to survive, all the other groups involved in this matter had not ended well. Especially Zhao Guangchong's group, who had died without knowing why. If the Sky Demon had the chance to capture humans alive, he would definitely capture them and then use hunger, pain, and other means to constantly eliminate their will and turn them into a body for the Sky Demon to possess. He would never simply kill them. Moreover, among the corpses found, there was not a single person missing from that group. This clearly did not seem to be the work of the Sky Demon. Of course, it could not be ruled out that the Sky Demon or the Northern Restoration Society had deliberately set up a trap to make him and Luo Su turn against each other. That was why he had asked Luo Su to come and ask about this matter. However, he did not expect that Luo Su would not give him any face at all and would directly flip the table. There must be something fishy about this matter. Li Zhong reached out and touched his chin, murmuring, "I just don't know if this is the Dragon King's spy or Luo Su's fishing in troubled waters." At the same time, the smile on Luo Su's face gradually disappeared as he walked out of the conference room. He walked expressionlessly through the crowd on the street. When he passed by a dark alley, Luo Su's figure turned and disappeared without a trace. The eyes of the two Yi Bus Ho who were responsible for keeping watch widened as they hurriedly rushed into the alley. On the other side, Lin Yuan, who had already arrived outside Julu City, raised his eyebrows slightly and murmured, "It can't be. The two Yi Bus Ho members have been cut off from me. Now that the Wei River is holding back almost 80% of the Northern Frontier's forces, the Shuangjin barbarian won't invade the border at this time, right?" The Yi Bus Ho members had either stayed in the hinterland of the Northern Frontier to take over the work of Yi Bus Ho, who had a large number of people transferred away, or stayed near the Frost Mirror grassland to guard against the movements of the Shuangjin dynasty. If two of them suddenly died, it was most likely because the rangers stationed at the edge of the Frost Mirror grassland had a conflict with the Frost Mirror barbarian. Although this kind of thing was not common, it was still considered a small conflict that could be directly ignored. No, that's not right. The Northern Frontier was now at war with the Sky Demon. Not only had the Frost Mirror Empire and the Qing River Empire avoided a disaster, but who would dare to find trouble with the Northern Frontier at this time? It was already a mistake for them not to help the Northern Frontier, but they still wanted to stab them in the back at this time. Weren't they trying to see if the Heavenly Gate Guardians still had the strength to kill them after killing the Shinwu dynasty? Lin Yuan's eyebrows were tightly knitted together. For a moment, he could not understand why such a thing had suddenly happened. It was true that he was now active behind the Heavenly Demons, but it was impossible for the Heavenly Demons to be active behind him. Originally, the rules had been set before that the chaos of the Heavenly Demons would be firmly confined to the territory of the Shinwu dynasty, and they would be allowed to fight with Lin Yuan. Firstly, they wanted to weigh the weight of Lin Yuan, the descendant of the demon court, and secondly, they wanted to find time to solve other matters first. However, if things were really messed up, it would be a slap in the face to the guardian of the Elysium. Could it be? With a thought, Lin Yuan's expression became gloomy. He suddenly remembered the conversation he had with Li Guhong on Mount Cloud Crane. The Heavenly Gate Guardians had made their moves so quickly. "Have a cup of tea?" Suddenly, a voice sounded. It was neither loud nor soft, but it instantly suppressed the surrounding noise and entered Lin Yuan's ears. Lin Yuan suddenly turned his head and saw a pale-faced young man with long hair that was half black and half white. At this moment, he was dressed in linen clothes and was busy standing behind a simple and crude small tea stall. This kind of small tea stall was not uncommon near the city gate. After all, the city was not a place where one could enter or leave as one wished. The Northern Frontier did this well, but it was only okay. After all, there were not many cultivators in this world, and if any one of them had bad intentions, they could bring about great destruction. It was not something that could be detected by security checks. Could it be that you would not even allow people to enter the city gate just because they were cultivators? Therefore, the Northern Frontier did not seem to have any thresholds or checks, but as long as a stranger entered the Northern Frontier, they would basically be in contact with the Demon the Arch Association. There were also embroidered uniform guards secretly watching over them. It did not matter if they had bad intentions, but as long as they put it into practice, they would probably be secretly subdued before they could even get close to their target. And now, even the fate of the Shinwu dynasty had been sold out by Lei Qiusheng. Naturally, the various policies were also corrupted. Entering the city had been turned into a situation where one was molesting an innocent woman and asking for bribes. For example, even if one really wanted to destroy the city, as long as one could pay the entrance tax, one could directly enter. Of course, if one really could not pay, the city gate order would not stop one from entering. However, it would definitely be handled according to the rules. It was like checking one's household register. After checking all the information, one would be allowed to enter one by one. For those who were queuing behind, it was simply a form of torture. Other than the western gate that was specially for nobles, the other 3 city gates were all like this. Chapter 8:15. But even so, there was still a long queue to enter the city. After all, this was not the northern frontier. Although there were various products in the villages and towns, they had to pay taxes and support the aristocratic families. If they did not enter the city to make some extra money, these villages and towns would starve to death. Tyranny was fiercer than a tiger. These words had not appeared only once or twice in the history of the previous life. Just like many policies that benefited the country and the people later became the sharp blade that the aristocratic families used to fill their private pockets. Even if the royal family wanted to intervene, the aristocratic families would cry and beg the Confucian scholars to scold the royal family and say something like, competing with the people for benefits. They did not care whether the national treasury was enough, whether the people's livelihood could be maintained, or whether the country was about to collapse. There were people like Zhang Zhuzheng, who risked their lives to continue the reform of the country. There were also scums like the 6 gentlemen of Donglin who did evil in the Ming dynasty and went to the Qing dynasty to seek official positions after the fall of the Ming dynasty. A country with a royal family could be destroyed because of these policies, these officials, and these aristocratic families, let alone the Shenwu dynasty that had lost Lei Qiusheng. Everyone knew that this was wrong, but no one could stand out to change it. Even if someone stood out, it would be useless. After all, the fate of the Shenwu dynasty had been sold by Lei Qiusheng. Even if it could prolong its life, it could not save a corpse that had begun to stiffen. However, these people were used to being bullied. Although the world was difficult, they could still survive. After all, they were not without hope. Since a series of reforms in the northern frontier were implemented, many people in the nearby Shuangjian and Xinjiang wanted to move to the northern frontier, let alone the Shenwu dynasty. So they only needed to survive and wait for Lin Yuan to lead the army to the south and give them a good life. Therefore, this kind of small tea stall near the city gate came into being. It was impossible to line up for half a day without even drinking water. That would definitely cause trouble. In addition, this kind of tea stall only boiled some hot water and some rough tea leaves that only had a bitter taste. Therefore, the price was cheap and the business was not bad. However, except for Lin Yuan, no one knew that the young man behind the tea stall was at least a supreme master. With a thought, he could easily wipe Zhulu city off the map of the south. Of course, except for those who already knew his identity, no one would think that the young man who ran around and talked with some hooligans was actually a powerful cultivator. Why are you here? Lin Yuan silently left the team, sat gently in front of the small tea stall, and asked softly. Kong Lezin chuckled and pushed a cup of strong tea in front of Lin Yuan. He said jokingly, why else would I come to this small southern city? It's because what you did and said before has crossed some people's bottom line. They even joined hands to prepare a sky-high reward for your head. So? Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows slightly, a cold light surging in his eyes. He had crossed the line. Back then, those people thought that they were stronger than him and took away a lot of profits just by opening their mouths. After that, they did not report to him at all. Instead, they treated him like a henchman and directly threw the mess of the heavenly demons to the northern region to deal with. It was obvious that they were not satisfied with him and wanted more profits. Now that he was strong enough, he wanted to kick some people out. Could it be his fault? So, now there are some people who overestimate themselves and are hiding in the dark, ready to make trouble. I came this time to help you get rid of a batch. Kong Lezin's smile faded and a trace of darkness flashed in his eyes. He said coldly, a bunch of old things. They can't even see the changes in the world and still refuse to admit that they should withdraw from the stage. Some people, and I mean that you have done a good job, but we hope that you can go even further. The more people who rebel, the better. It's good that we can eliminate all the forces under their hands in one go, so that they don't have any ideas that they shouldn't have. And then when I'm no longer useful, I'll be eaten by you? Lin Yuan drank the hot tea in front of him in one gulp. He frowned slightly and said, "You're giving people hot tea on such a hot day? If ordinary hawkers did business like you, they would sell their pants in 2 days. Isn't it good to let them suffer a little? I told them to drink tea, do they dare to refuse?" Kong Lezin sat opposite Lin Yuan, and there was no change in his eyes. He said indifferently, "I don't deny that you are indeed a big piece of fat meat. Everyone wants to take a bite of you, but as far as I know, no one wants to be the first one to take a bite of you. Of course, the first one to take a bite of you can have a mouth full of oil, but no one knows whether your meat is poisonous or not. So, as long as you can poison everyone who opens their mouth, the rest of the people will have to stay away from you no matter how much they want to eat you. Thank you for your advice, I'll be leaving first." Lin Yuan nodded slightly. He turned his right hand and placed 2 coins on the tea stall. Kong Lezin took a deep breath after seeing Lin Yuan's receding figure. He glanced at the scorching sun above his head before slowly standing up and murmuring, "It's late, time to clean up." With that, 6 copper coins flew out from Kong Lezin's sleeves and expanded in the wind, instantly enveloping the entire Zhulu city. Suddenly, the world changed. It was as though the entire Zhulu city had turned into a chessboard. Everyone was frozen on the spot. Their actions, expressions, and expressions were all frozen. It was as though someone had pressed the pause button while watching a movie. In the next moment, some people were burned to ashes by flames that came out of nowhere. Some people were covered in white frost and shattered into icicles all over the ground. Some people cracked inch by inch and were sucked into the endless darkness. There were also some people who rapidly aged from their youthful appearances and directly turned into withered skeletons. Then, their skeletons rotted and turned into fine powder, disappearing without a trace with a gentle breeze. After about 4 to 5 breaths, the 6 coins returned to Kong Lezin's sleeve. The frozen scene began to play again. However, no one noticed that hundreds of people were missing in the city. Even if someone noticed this, they only dared to shrink on the spot and shiver with intense fear in their eyes. As their trembling legs strode forward, streams of light flew out of Zhulu city and disappeared into the horizon. The cultivators who were at least in the Heaven Star realm and in the Void realm didn't dare to stay in Zhulu city for even a second, as if they had encountered a great terror. "I hope I made the right bet this time." Kong Lezin let out a long breath. When the crowd in front of him suddenly called out, "Boss, serve tea," he laughed and said, "It's here. Today is New Year's Eve. 5 consecutive updates. Qing Feng wishes everyone a happy new year and all your wishes come true." Chapter 8:16. An hour later, at Red Dust Inn in Zhulu City. Long. Vice President Guan. The shopkeeper, who was reading a biography behind the counter, stood up to greet Lin Yuan when he saw him enter. It was also this sentence that caused everyone sitting in the lobby of the Red Dust Inn to look at Lin Yuan. "Miss Guan. All 318 heroes of my Ganyu Island have come together to support you." The first one to speak was Zhao Deyong, who was drinking with a few strong men. "Yes." Lin Yuan nodded slightly as a greeting. He looked around at the faces of everyone in the lobby, then turned his head to look at the shopkeeper. He narrowed his eyes and said, "Is there anyone who didn't give me face and didn't come?" There were men and women, old and young in the hall, but every one of them had a cultivation base and was famous in the underworld. Even the inconspicuous people sitting in the corner had dozens of people under them. If all the people in this small hall were to gather together, they could form an army of 700,000 to 800,000 people in the blink of an eye. As for whether or not these people were willing to come, and whether or not they would listen to him, it had nothing to do with him. He was the one giving orders, and those who disobeyed him would naturally be dealt with by others. What he was even more curious about was whether there would still be people who would not give him face and openly disagree with him, directly expressing that they would not be coming. Such a good chicken, it would be a pity if he didn't kill it to warn the monkeys. The shopkeeper pondered for a moment, and under the gaze of a group of greenwood cultivators, he said, "No one dares to directly say that they don't want to listen to you, but there are a few who went overboard. For example, the Thunderbolt Hall said that their hall master is still in seclusion and only sent an outer member. There's also Lejin village. Although the village master agreed, according to the time, he should have arrived in Julu City. However, according to the news from the branch, this village master hasn't left yet." And then, after listening to the list of names, Lin Yuan's gaze swept across the faces of the crowd again, but he found that these people did not look surprised at all. Obviously, they already knew that there were so many people who did not give them face and were unwilling to come. Furthermore, most of them were not willing to come. It was only because they were afraid of revenge that they had no choice but to come. Furthermore, Guan Zhaoshan was currently in the limelight and had the backing of the Ether Association. If not a single one of the Lulan influences turned up for the first time he had convened a meeting, it would be too much of a slap to the Ether Association's face. "You're giving me face by coming here. Thank you." Lin Yuan bowed slightly to the forest cultivators in the hall. When he straightened his body, his eyes were dark and cold. He lowered his voice and said, "In the Jianghu, to put it nicely, you are righteous, but to put it bluntly, you gave me some face this time and let the matter pass. Next time, I will give you some face. You and me, no one should make things difficult for the other, right?" As soon as he finished speaking, a burst of laughter rang out in the hall. But no one refuted Lin Yuan's words. After all, wasn't this the case in Jianghu? Who was on good terms with whom? It was just that the benefits were not there and it was not worth it for both sides to kill each other. "Did you all hear the name list just now?" Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows slightly and said with a cold smile, "If they don't give me face, I won't give them face either. From now on, I will kill all the influences on the name list. No one will be left alive." "Why should I?" The one who spoke this time was the outer member of Thunderbolt Hall. After all, he was also on the name list. At this moment, he was frightened by Lin Yuan's cold smile and subconsciously wanted to ask for some support to give himself some courage. Lin Yuan tapped his foot and came to the other party's side. He placed his white right hand on the other party's shoulder and said with a smile, "For example, Thunderbolt Hall. Since they said that their leader is in seclusion and sent this person here, I can say that Thunderbolt Hall is insulting me. But if that's the case, wouldn't it be too overbearing? What if Thunderbolt Hall thinks that this lad can represent the entire Thunderbolt Hall when their leader is not out? Is she thinking of, interesting?" The rest of the Lulan cultivators' eyes lit up and they started whispering. The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth rose. He reached out and patted the other party's shoulder twice. "So, I think that there is no need for your hall master to come out. From today onwards, you are the hall master of Thunderbolt Hall. Do you have any objections?" The outer member of Thunderbolt Hall's expression changed. He wanted to deny it on the spot but seemed to have thought of something. He looked at the wolf-like eyes around him and said with a smile, "I think so too." He did not have a good impression of Thunderbolt Hall. After all, Thunderbolt Hall did not take Lin Yuan seriously this time. They sent him, an outer member, to humiliate Lin Yuan, which was equivalent to pushing him to his death. The most infuriating thing was that they were not even willing to pay for the relocation fee and sent him to attend the meeting. He did not know if they were treating him as a fool or the legendary Guan Zhaoshan as a fool. "Ha ha ha," Lin Yuan laughed and patted the other party's shoulder harder. Then, his expression turned serious. He formed a knife hand with his right hand and performed a few moves of the Thousand Mountain Blade technique. He said in a deep voice, "Thunderbolt Hall is not difficult to deal with. Even without the Ether Association, the Red Dust Society can easily destroy them. However, I have always believed that it is better to share the wealth than to take it all alone. No matter how much wealth one can reap, one cannot reap all the benefits, right? May I ask what is the meaning of this, Vice President Guan?" A middle-aged man carrying a 9-foot-long blade stood up and looked at Lin Yuan's right hand with a fervent gaze. His resolute face showed that he wanted to continue. It's the blade demon, Li Wenxin from Stellar Sky City. Was Vice President Guan practicing a blade technique? Yes, it must be something good to make Li Wenxin lose his composure. Some of the greenwood cultivators began to whisper. After all, the battle that had made Li Wenxin famous was because he coveted the inheritance of a certain saber sect. Thus, he had single-handedly slaughtered the entire saber sect. He had abandoned all the treasures, secret techniques, and divine abilities, but had taken away all the saber sect's manuals. Therefore, something that could make Li Wenxin lose his composure was most likely a saber technique, and it was definitely not something ordinary. This blade is called the Thousand Mountain. It is a preliminary creation of mine and has yet to be graded. However, even if it is just a blade technique, it can reach the heaven star level. It is also accompanied by the blade nurturing technique. It uses one's qi and blood to nurture the blade. The more qi and blood there is, the stronger it will be. Lin Yuan turned his gaze and said with a smile, "Consider it one of the rewards." Chapter 8:17. One of the rewards. As soon as the voice fell, everyone's eyes fell on Lin Yuan, and their eyes flashed with brilliance. I don't think I owe anyone anything. When I was hunted down by the Flying Star sect, the Red Dust Society protected me. Now, I'm returning the favor. So, I have no reason to be stingy when I ask for your help this time, right? The smile on Lin Yuan's face didn't diminish at all as he said, "I'll get someone to make a bounty list for that list." The head of a mortal evolution state can be exchanged for 1 point, the head of an airborne state can be exchanged for 5 points, the head of a heavenly gang state can be exchanged for 10 points, and the head of a void state can be exchanged for 100 points. You can work together or do it alone. Afterward, you can ask for any reward based on the points. As long as you have enough points, I have everything you want. He paused and added, also, after these forces are annihilated, everything you get will belong to you. The Red Dust Society won't take a single cent. As soon as he said that, the eyes of all the cultivators in the hall turned green. They were like hungry wolves in the dark. The set of swordsmanship demonstrated by Lin Yuan before could enter Li Wenxin's eyes. It was already impossible for it to be an ordinary swordsmanship. In addition, with such a record of destroying the Cloud Crane Temple, no swordsman would give up. Plus, all the spoils would belong to them after annihilating the enemy. With the Red Dust Society as the new leader of the Forest Society behind them, no one would be able to find fault with it. Some of the representatives of the Forest Society who already had enough resources but didn't have an excuse to expand their territory were already showing their killing intent. They were just waiting to go out and do something big. I'm Qingshuang's Sword, a solo cultivator. Greetings, Boss Guan. A young scholar in a cyan robe stood up and said in a deep voice, just now, Boss Guan demonstrated a blade art that caused the blade demon to exclaim in surprise. However, this art is of no benefit to us. May I ask if Boss Guan has any other advanced martial arts related to weapons other than the blade art? Azure Frost Sword wasn't a name, it was also a nickname. He and the blade demon, Li Wenxin, were both rogue cultivators, but for a lone cultivator like him to be able to gather together with the representatives of various forest powers, it was enough to prove that their individual strength wasn't the slightest bit inferior to some third-rate forest powers. Yes. Lin Yuan nodded slightly, and his hand gesture changed again. In an instant, countless sword shadows, spear auras, fist auras appeared in the entire inn. Under the consumption of a large amount of incense, Lin Yuan's various martial arts, cultivation methods, and even rare treasures had reached a terrifying number. In the entire Sky Martial continent, there was probably no power that could compare to Lin Yuan in this aspect. After all, he had the system behind him, as well as more than 9,000 hosts from various worlds. As long as the power of incense was in place, no matter who came, they would be crippled. We'll set off now. The group of greenwood cultivators whistled out, each one faster than the last. Were there many Lulan powers that didn't give Lin Yuan any face? Many. But the problem was that there were even more Lulan powers that gave face to Lin Yuan. In a situation where there were too many wolves and too little meat, coupled with the fact that these Lulan cultivators usually licked the blood from their blades, seeing such a big piece of meat in front of them, how could they just lick it and be done with it? After waiting for the Lulan cultivators to disperse, the shopkeeper walked to Lin Yuan's side. Vice President Guan's boldness in spending so much money, this little one admires it very much, but isn't this matter a little too hasty? Those powers don't like the feeling of having someone above them, and it's not something that can be changed in a day or two. On the contrary, Vice President Guan's actions will easily cause those busybodies of Jianghu to spread rumors, saying that you're unbearably cruel, and that you want to exterminate an entire family just to save face. Heh. Lin Yuan's lips curled up slightly, and he said with a smile, if someone dares to say that, it means that I'm not cruel enough. Otherwise, if I lent them the guts, would they dare to name me and spread rumors? Furthermore, why do I have to gain a good reputation in the eyes of a bunch of dead people? Yes, this little one spoke too much. The shopkeeper nodded slightly, and retreated to the side. How is the batch of immortal seedlings selected by Daoist Hongchen? Lin Yuan changed the topic and asked. The shopkeeper was slightly startled, and he replied, those immortal seedlings are the bloodline of the old man of the god sculpting sect, and they can be said to be of good blood, and there's no possibility of betrayal. They should have already boarded the ship and are planning to take a detour north from the Azure River Empire, and head to the Northern Frontier Academy to study. Please take care of them in the future. Of course. Lin Yuan nodded in response, and then waved his hand casually, and walked up to the guest room upstairs. After unifying the Lulan forces, it was time to make a move on the demon sect. If it weren't for the Lulan forces that didn't give him face, Lin Yuan might have to spend a lot of effort to persuade these Lulan forces to die. But now, these people who dared to defy him were about to face the tragedy of annihilation. After the war, not only would they be able to eat a mouthful of oil, but they would also get a lot of benefits from Lin Yuan. Even if they knew that the demon sect wasn't easy to deal with, these Lulan forces didn't have the guts to defy him. However, although the demon sect wasn't strong, and they had the help of other organizations, it was only a matter of time before they were destroyed. Lin Yuan only added fuel to the fire, and the process was accelerated. But if the demon sect was destroyed, and the sky demon side lost a lot of bodies in the northern frontier, it was inevitable that they would go south again, and wipe out the resistance forces here. First-rate forces and above were still alive, but the weak forces would have a hard time surviving. Especially these Lulan forces, who were hated by everyone and hated by ghosts, it was impossible for any major force to protect them, and they would definitely become the sky demon's main target. Therefore, in Lin Yuan's eyes, these people were always dead people, including the Red Dust Society. It was impossible for Lin Yuan to take out another soul-sculpting mantra, but he definitely had other cultivation methods of the same level. Under Lin Yuan's instructions, the Red Dust Society selected a group of people with good aptitudes who hadn't officially chosen a cultivation method, and were only in the foundation establishment stage, to go to the northern frontier to learn a new cultivation method. The rest of the Red Dust Society's members were nothing more than chess pieces in this big game. Whether they could survive or not, it all depended on whether their lives were tough enough. But with the Ether Association's protection, their vitality would definitely be damaged, but they wouldn't be destroyed, which was obviously much better than the other Lulan forces. Daoist Red Dust didn't have any objections to Lin Yuan's plan. From his personal point of view, as long as he could see the hope of the Red Dust Society rising again, and that their upper limit wouldn't be stuck at the half-step void realm, and that they could still exist in the Sky Martial continent in the future, that was the last wish of this old man. For this, even if he had to pay the price with his life, he wouldn't hesitate. Daoist Red Dust's thoughts were the same as those of the God Sculpting Sect's remnant bloodline. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.